I become the Demon King in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401 Eternal Looking for External Aid. Lin Hao was fishing in the main Marvel Cinematic Universe when the fish he was worried about sent its daughter to Earth 1001, a universe known as Earth 1001. This is the universe where Deadpool and his X-Force reside, and also the universe where Deadpool lives in the film Deadpool vs. Wolverine. A rare red-headed woman walked into the used car dealership where Deadpool worked and asked for Wade Wilson's services. "Hey, beautiful, I don't know where you heard of Mr. Wade, but trust me, I'll definitely satisfy you." A tiger egg-like head leaned in front of the redhead, surveying her curvaceous figure with a suggestive smile. The man wore a blue work uniform, a wig stapled to his head. In Wade's own words, it looked perfectly real, perfectly authentic. The redhead recognized the iconic tiger-skinned head and smiled charmingly. "Will you come with me to test drive a car?" "Sure, any car, I guarantee you'll be satisfied." The redhead walked ahead, swaying with each step. Wade followed eagerly, his eyes fixed on the plump, peach-shaped buttocks in front of him, a chuckle. Wade, who had just broken up with his girlfriend, was still thinking about her, but he was no chaste man. An occasional wild game outing was no big deal. Seeing such a beauty had already tempted him. The redhead randomly chose a red Porsche and, wearing high heels, climbed directly into the driver's seat. Wade had no intention of stopping her, confident that with his driving skills, he could even fly into the sky to save someone. The engine roared, and the red supercar drove out of the trading center parking lot, weaving left and right on the main road, speeding up. "Wow, I didn't expect you to be such a good driver." Wade's lust subsided, and he stared at the redhead intently. He had already noticed something was wrong, but she was just being complacent because she couldn't die. He wanted to see what this woman was up to. The next second, the red supercar's speed suddenly doubled, its immense thrust pinning Deadpool to the passenger seat. But the red-haired woman beside him remained unfazed, expertly steering the wheel. The traffic outside the car was so fast it looked like a flash of light, and Deadpool was shocked to discover it was truly a stream of light. The red supercar was clearly traveling in a beam of colorful light. "Wow," Deadpool gaped in astonishment. He was about to say something when the red supercar suddenly braked. Deadpool's body continued to surge forward due to inertia, and not even the seatbelt could help him. He crashed straight into the car window, until a slender hand grabbed the back of his neck. "Get out." The red-haired woman's voice lost its previous allure. Deadpool then realized the car had arrived in a white space, white sky, white ground. As she opened the car door and stepped out, the red-haired woman's skin began to change, along with her hair color. Her skin became a strange grayish-white, a bit like mercury, but a little darker than mercury, while her hair turned an orange-red. The woman stepped forward. Deadpool opened the car door with a hint of caution and looked around. White was everywhere, making it impossible to tell where he was. Then, a sliver of black appeared in the distance. A strange, humanoid figure suddenly appeared, sitting cross-legged, 5 or 6 meters tall, hovering in midair. It had arms and legs, and its entire body was pitch black, but this blackness was dotted with brilliant starlight. Like a mysterious galaxy. Behind its head were 2 horizontal and vertical lines, resembling a hat brim or some mysterious symbol. The orange-haired woman approached the figure and said respectfully, "Dad, I've brought Wade Wilson." The woman was one of Eternity's daughters, a manifestation, the embodiment of the multiverse's concepts of vision and enlightenment, often sporting her current, queenly appearance. Out of boredom, Eternity created 5 sons and 2 daughters as his children, known as the 7 Sons of Eternity. While these were called children, they were actually clones of Eternity, drawing upon certain concepts he possessed and imbuing them with a physical form. As children, he traveled across various universes to experience the joys of life. Simply put, a geek who's been bored for 1,000 years has used a few strands of his fur to create several clones, allowing them to travel the world and experience the mundane world. While they may be fur, they also possess privileges granted by Eternity, materializing abstract concepts and possessing some of Eternity's abilities. Are you aliens? A's or aliens? Wade, fearless and incapable of death, strolled over with a carefree air. Forget it, A's belong to Universal Pictures, not Fox. Eternity's head turned toward Wade, its featureless face seemingly revealing a hint of satisfaction. "Wade Wilson, I need a favor," a ethereal, mysterious voice spoke directly into Wade's consciousness. "Who's talking in my head?" Wade glanced around, finally fixing his gaze on Eternity, floating in midair. "You really are aliens." "Shut up, Linkson, the daughter," scolded Wade, proudly introducing him. "The being before you is the great God Eternal, the creator of the multiverse and the maker of all things in the universe." Wade was stunned for a moment, then a look of floating astonishment appeared. "Wow, so impressive. If you're so powerful, why did you ask me for help?" "You?" Linkson exclaimed in anger. She didn't understand why her great father would ask her to find such a slacker. Her father's words had just shocked her even more, so she used her scolding to vent her anger. Eternal raised his hand, and Linkson immediately lowered her head and shut up. "Because you are special. In countless universes, you are the most special life, one of a kind." Although he still had doubts about Eternal's identity, Wade was very pleased with the flattery. "Good, you're very nice. Talk more. Have you never wondered why your head is overflowing with so many strange memories? Every time you say something strange, the people right next to you seem deaf to it." As Yonghang pointed out the key point, Wade's timid head began to wrinkle, and he began to realize the problem. "You mean, how do you know about A's and aliens? How do you know about Universal Pictures and 20th Century Fox?" Yonghang gave him another push. "Aren't these just complaints?" The furrows between Wade's brows deepened. "Many people have common catchphrases, like fuck you, woo zhi, and turtle son. Some are used to curse, while others are simply spontaneous expressions of emotion, meaningless." Wade once thought his frequent complaints were meaningless, but now, after being pointed out by this seemingly unusual person, it seemed as if his mind had opened up, a sudden enlightenment. "They are movie characters in a film company from another world." Eternal's voice was neither happy nor sad. But he continued to say something that shattered Linkson's three views. "We are too." Dad Linkson was stunned. "Wow, the ultimate secret of the Marvel Universe has been discovered." This time, Wade immediately covered his mouth, and shock and a hint of fear appeared in his two unaffected eyes. "It seems that you have been able to react." Eternal's voice conveyed a hint of obvious relief. "This is what I want to ask you for help. I want you to try to find this world. If you can do it, I can fulfill any wish for you in this universe." Chapter 402, Message to the Editorial Department. Eternal's claim to omnipotence comes with an inescapable premise. He is a deity created by Marvel editors. His powers are determined by the settings given to him by his editors. His omnipotence is strictly confined to the Marvel multiverse. He can't even travel to the real world, which exists independently of the Marvel multiverse but also within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel has only allowed Deadpool in the comics and She-Hulk in the film and television to break the fourth wall and achieve this. Eternal knows the real world exists, but he can't go there because his editors haven't given him permission. Currently, Deadpool and Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe is protected by Lin Hao in the base universe. His freedom is unrestricted, allowing him to travel anywhere he pleases. As long as he's in this universe, Deadpool can't die, and even if he does, Lin Hao can still save him. Having experienced a life where his thoughts and consciousness are unaffected by higher dimensional beings, Wade Wilson would be foolish to return to another universe. Furthermore, in the base universe, as long as he doesn't harm the Chinese, he can do anything, and if anything goes wrong, he has a powerful boss to back him up. "I can go anywhere in the universe, and play with alien beauties whenever I want. Life is so carefree." 5 years before the main movie universe, another She-Hulk was randomly wiped out by Thanos. Now, Lin Hao guards the scene, and Eternity dares not move. When the anomaly in the movie universe occurred, Eternity turned his gaze to Earth. He indeed sensed traces of a cell being destroyed in Lin Hao's body. That cell possessed all of his abilities. The multiverse of Eternity, as the original body, only possessed the authority granted by its personhood, the ability to split or erase all individual Eternals, but that didn't mean it possessed more or greater abilities. It's like the mathematical concept of infinity. No matter how many parts it is divided into, each individual remains infinitely large. Eternity is essentially a collection of such concepts. Lin Hao's aura of another destroyed clone indicates that this person possesses power that threatens his survival. Furthermore, Eternity wasn't alarmed by the Avengers' fate being altered, or America being invaded by another America. These are minor matters compared to Eternity's prestige. What truly alarmed Eternity was the aura from another world, a world completely different from the Marvel multiverse. This was an unusual situation Eternal had never witnessed in his countless years of existence. Lin Hao had deliberately chosen the main movie universe to pull out the Monkey King and Yang Jian with a PS5 and a TV retrieval stick, testing Eternal's ability to detect the anomaly. Just like the deliberate resurrection over 200 times, it was bait thrown out. If Eternal arrived, he could try to defeat him. If he didn't, he could observe his next move and gain a deeper understanding of the higher dimensional existence of the Marvel Universe. He couldn't just give in and do nothing, could he? That would be too unbecoming of a creator god. Marvel editors confirmed that both characters possessed the ability to break the fourth wall were under Lin Hao's control. While She-Hulk and Deadpool existed in other universes, they were unable to use their abilities because they lacked explicit authorization. Eternal had no choice but to seek out another Deadpool who is highly likely to gain this power in the future, the Deadpool from the Earth 1001 universe. With 3 standalone feature films under his belt, and having experienced the return of copyright after Disney acquired Fox, this Deadpool, who frequently taunted the audience in the films, could very well break the fourth wall and journey into the real world. The real world that Eternity identifies as is naturally the real world within the Marvel box. He believes it is the origin of everything and the place where the multiverse was created. Interestingly, even after Eternity learned from Jonathan Hickman, Marvel's former editor-in-chief and Captain Universe, that he was a created character, he still didn't harbor Deadpool-like urges to escape into the real world and kill the editor, thereby achieving transcendence. Firstly, as the embodiment of an abstract concept, Eternity lacks much humanity, similar to an artificial intelligence without self-awareness, and hasn't yet reached the point of betraying its creator. Secondly, Eternity believes that even as a created character, he still bears the heavy responsibility of maintaining order in the universe. Order, not order. He maintains the macroscopic process of the universe's creation, development, and demise, not the order required by a single species to safeguard its own interests. In other words, Eternity considers himself extremely important and powerful, so even after learning that he is a created character, he still feels he shoulders a great and glorious mission. If Eternal were ever to be exposed to more human nature and begin to harbor selfish desires, he might harbor thoughts of rebelling against a Marvel editorial department. I need you to find a way to travel to this world, find a company called Marvel, and alert their leader of a major change in the cinematic universe numbered Earth 199,999. Eternal then briefly briefed Wade Wilson on the changes in the main film universe, focusing on Lin Hao and the man in monkey he had pulled from another, strange world. Why should I go? Wade wondered. Can't you go yourself? I just said, of all the universes, you're the most special, Eternal lied, ignoring the other Deadpool and She-Hulk. Even I can't find and reach that world, but you possess this special ability, you just need to activate it. If Marvel editor-in-chief Jonathan Hickman were still serving as Captain Universe, Eternal would have saved himself the trouble and could have simply informed the supposed Guardian of Eternity. Unfortunately, the editor-in-chief was busy with official duties and had only come for a vacation. Now he's gone, and Captain Universe has been replaced by Spider-Man from another universe. Many superheroes have held the position of Captain Universe, including Deadpool, Spider-Man, the Hulk, Juggernaut, Quasar, and even Spider-Man's Aunt May. Director Lin had confiscated Aunt May, but Eternal had. Unable to find someone to speak directly with, Eternal had to use Deadpool as a messenger to deliver the message. What benefits can I get? Wade pondered for a moment, then immediately pressed. Can you restore my handsome face? Can you let Uncle Wade join the Avengers? I want to be a superhero idolized by children, that's nothing. As long as you help me achieve my goals, whatever you want will come true. Eternal, now like a wealthy man. Completely unconcerned with the Wade's dream of a family, to him, it was just a thought. Alright, teach me how. Wade's wariness remained, but he was confident he wouldn't die, so he decided to take a gamble. If he lost, he'd lose nothing. If he won, he'd win big. Did he really think Uncle Wade would sell his used car? Or live in a dark, damp, old apartment? Even unable to pay rent, Wade, who had promised his girlfriend he would stop being a mercenary, was now struggling financially. Without a movement from Eternal, countless bubbles suddenly appeared on the white surface, each containing a dazzling galaxy. These are the multiverses, each bubble representing a universe, Eternal explained to Wade. We're currently outside the multiverse. I need you to find a way to sense the real world beyond the higher dimensions. Chapter 403, Call the Parents If You Can't Win. What a promising guy. Time and space were like playthings to Eternity. He himself symbolized all of time and space in the multiverse, so he had ample time to allow Wade Wilson to unleash his potential. Unfortunately, this potential was subject to the editorial department's purview. Otherwise, why would he have gone to such lengths? Eternity could simply take it and use it. Eternity and the spiritual manifestation were both conceptual manifestations, endowed with infinite lifespans. They cared little for the passage of time and could endure loneliness. Moreover, in this strange space, the concept of time could exist or not, entirely at eternity's will. Wade didn't know how long it took, but after countless attempts, he finally plunged headfirst into the sea of colorful bubbles in a coquettish manner. Eternity immediately instructed the spiritual manifestation beside him, "Follow me. Don't mess around. Just do what I say." This was a thought that emerged from Eternity's limited humanity. He wanted the spiritual manifestation to attempt to enter the real world, to see the world that created them on his behalf. While Ling Xian was nominally his daughter, she was actually his clone. Within the Marvel multiverse, a single thought would connect them, but in the real world, that connection would likely be severed. Eternity was unsure whether Ling Xian would succeed, and was prepared for her failure to be erased by the creator's consciousness. However, he hadn't anticipated the sheer coincidence of Ling Xian's possession of Deadpool. Deadpool was experiencing a burst of inspiration at that very moment, awakening his potential and entering a state of epiphany, and Ling Xian represented precisely that concept. So, when he returned to his conceptual nature and possessed Deadpool, he seamlessly merged with Deadpool, thus circumventing the rules. Or perhaps Ling Xian wasn't a separate entity at this point, she had already merged with Deadpool, perfectly adhering to the rules. Such a natural coincidence was something even Eternity couldn't replicate, as it was a privilege he didn't possess. Wade experienced a moment of panic after falling into the sea of bubbles, but upon discovering he wasn't affected, he began to move curiously again. He thoroughly enjoyed this novel experience. The spirit, already absorbed into his consciousness, couldn't warn him, nor could it escape. If it reactivated its consciousness, not only would it be lost in this strange dimension, fading into oblivion, but Wade would be doomed too. Bored after playing for a while, Wade tried to swim upwards, but unfortunately, there was no concept of up, down, left, or right. After a while, he couldn't find an exit. Shit, where do I go? Wade sensed danger. He'd previously relied on a sudden realization to enter this strange dimension, and now, even a second attempt wouldn't guarantee success, meaning he couldn't even get back out. To avoid starving to death, Wade had to find a way out. After an indeterminate amount of time, perhaps the urge to survive reignited Wade's understanding, and he suddenly swam in a direction guided by his inner perception. After a while, Wade finally tore through a crack and slipped inside. Ho-ha, Uncle Wade is finally out. A gust of wind rushed into his mouth, interrupting his next words. Wade screamed in fear as he realized he was plummeting downwards from a high altitude. Wait, I can't fall to my death, Wade cried out for a moment. Then realized he wasn't going to die. He quickly shut up and struck a coquettish pose, welcoming Mother Earth's embrace. Puff, Wade was stabbed by a towering tree. The immense kinetic energy of the tree tip pushed through his anus and into his throat, even piercing his skull. He resembled a string of bullfrogs about to be grilled, his posture similar, his arms and legs splayed outward in a stress response. While the bullfrogs died, unable to feel pain, Wade couldn't die. Whoa. Of course, given his status, even the inherent abilities of his body were more than enough to overpower all the Avengers. In this real world without supernatural powers, he could easily destroy the world. Wade forced a sound from his abdomen to alert the suddenly appearing Linkson. He didn't care why Linkson had come, he just wanted him to save them. Otherwise, Wade would have to wait until he got used to the pain, tearing through flesh and breaking ribs with his bare hands, peeling his body from the tree, and then wait for recovery. Not only would the process be lengthy, but the pain would be inhumane. Linkson, awakened by his voice, sized him up before finally ripping him off, like a bullfrog from a bamboo skewer. After all, he'd need this bastard back home. Wade's recovery was long and painful, but thankfully, he'd experienced it countless times and was used to it. Let's go. Seeing him recover, Linkson said nothing more. He picked Wade up with one hand and teleported to the bottom floor of Marvel headquarters. It was late at night, so naturally, no one was working. Linkson casually dropped Wade and said coldly, "Find yourself a place to sleep for the night. Tomorrow, I'll go see the person in charge at Marvel." With that, Linkson vanished. Wade knew the woman had probably followed him because she had other things to do, but he wasn't angry. This strange experience had finally strengthened his faith in eternity. He'd never been able to do that before. Could that black guy really be the creator god? Wade pondered. Then I really need to think about my family dreams. Or maybe I'll just go outside the universe. He, as Deadpool, spending a night in a world without supernatural powers wasn't a problem. The two of them left the late-night streets one after another, but they didn't notice any flashes from Marvel's cameras or the cameras in several nearby shops. Arnim Zola, who had been left by Lin Hao to monitor the anomaly in the real world, became excited. Master is truly insightful. I finally found what I've been waiting for. Without a second thought, he contacted his master. The speed and even the rules of time in the real world differ from those in the Marvel multiverse. This is a world created by Marvel editors, and its rules are naturally different. The time Eternity needed to find external reinforcements and allow Wade to develop his potential was directly erased by Eternity, reflecting in the multiverse as if not a single second had passed. The Little Devil's demon contract can directly transcend dimensions. One moment, Arnim Zola thought, and the next, Lin Hao received a message. If you can't win, call the parents. Haha, what a promising young man. Chapter 404, Just a God. How many divisions does he have? After parting ways with Deadpool, Linkson arrived at a high-end hotel. With a single glance, she persuaded the front desk manager to book her a luxury suite. Although he had lost most of his divine powers, he could still easily manipulate some of the superpowers of mutants. This was the essence of Eternal's incarnation. Upon arriving in the room, Linkson immediately turned on his computer, bypassed a firewall, and accessed the mainland version of advertisement. He began searching for keywords like Yang Jian and Sun Wukong in Chinese. This was why Eternal had allowed him to risk infiltrate the real world. Since Lin Hao had dragged Yang Jian and the Monkey King out of the main movie universe, he had effectively approached Eternal and pried open his eyes, allowing him to witness the entire process. While Eternal couldn't infiltrate his consciousness into the world on the PS5 screen like a TV wand, he could retroactively see every one of Lin Hao's movements and even save the cutscenes from Black Myth, Wukong frame by frame, mastering every inch of the footage. The real world currently stands in May 2021, and Marvel Studios has reached the end of its peak with the Avengers and Thanos and is now on a downward spiral. In a hurry, they immediately pulled out Black Panther 2, their Nico Happy movie, to save the day. It grossed $840 million and re-established Disney's position as the company's most profitable division. Linkson didn't have time to search for information about Marvel. While he also wanted to know what his creator was like, the task his father had entrusted him was more important. After entering a keyword, the advertising function gave Linkson a flood of search results, the first few of which were entirely ads. Linkson patiently browsed through them. Although he lacked electronic skills, his eye and hand were still quite fast. A god in Eastern culture? A monkey, a high-ranking Buddhist figure, a three-eyed monster, a high-ranking Taoist figure, that's it. Taishang Laojin, the supreme deity of Eastern Taoism, was at most on par with God, but what was God on their universe? How many disciples did a mere god have? Linkson couldn't understand why his father would risk him searching for such information. Even Pangu, the Eastern creator god, had only comparable powers to his father's. Could his father be so afraid of such things? It was hilarious. Despite his disdain, Linkson faithfully carried out his father's orders, beginning to compare the animations his father had transmitted to him, searching for identical or similar animations to trace back to their source. Coincidentally, on August 20, 2020, the first trailer for Black Myth was released, and the style was very similar to the animated short in Linkson's mind. No way. My father asked me to find a game? You must be kidding. Completely baffled, Linkson diligently read all the information he could about Black Myth, even memorizing the original novel and all the Eastern mythology and Taoist classics. He memorized everything he saw, so it didn't take him long. The next morning, at 9 o'clock, Marvel Studios arrived for work. Linkson, having been up all night, accompanied Deadpool into the Marvel Studio building. The people in the lobby on the first floor were stunned by the sudden appearance of the tiger-skinned head, then quickly turned and took off running, shouting as they ran. Oh no! Deadpool's coming again. This real-world Marvel has been killed twice in a row by Deadpool, yet miraculously, the editors and staff remain the same, with all the changes occurring through normal hiring and departures. They've already died twice, only to be suddenly resurrected. Yet, everyone only remembers Deadpool coming to kill people, because that's just a plot in the comics, and they've participated in their editing and publishing, so they remember it. They don't remember their own deaths twice. This is a glaring flaw, yet no one at Marvel, not even the top brass, has noticed. This is the key to proving this world isn't real. Wow, I didn't expect I'd be so famous here, Wade boasted, unashamed. Even the editors recognize me, but the damn Avengers don't want me. I'll form a new Avengers when I get back. No, they should all change their names. My X-Force is pretty good. Lin Hao glanced around, quelling the commotion, then swaggered onto the elevator, heading straight for the upper floors. He naturally sought out Jonathan Hickman, the editor who had once written him into the Doctor Strange comics as Captain of the Universe. He was a high-ranking figure at Marvel, able to quickly inform other executives upon learning the news. He was also an old acquaintance, and his personal experience in Marvel plots facilitated communication. He searched through the employees' memories and easily found Jonathan Hickman's office. When Lin Hao pushed the door open, the editor-in-chief was engaged in a deep conversation with his attractive secretary. Coinciding, I've never tried that position. Wade's eyes lit up. Shit, the editor-in-chief, nearly deflated with fear, suddenly exclaimed in exasperation, "Who are you?" The attractive secretary's face paled, and she let out a series of screams. As a deity who materializes concepts, what hasn't Lin Hao seen? Some artists experience epiphanies at moments of peak excitement, so these feelings and experiences were also poured into Lin Hao's consciousness. She even slept with a third-generation Captain Marvel, Gurnis Will, with such skill and driving prowess that Gurnis Will couldn't stop thinking about her, repeatedly questioning why she toyed with his feelings. With a wave of his hand, the beautiful secretary passed out. With another wave, the editor-in-chief donned his clothes. After the shock, Jonathan finally recognized the two, a blue-gray queen with a tiger-shaped head, unmistakable. "Are you Lin Hao and Deadpool?" Jonathan muttered. "What the hell? Is Karen Boone up to something new?" Karen Boone was the editor of Deadpool Slaughters the Marvel Universe, the man who granted Deadpool the power to break the fourth wall. Incidentally, he also worked for DC, creating the Aquaman comic and working as an independent editor. This isn't a new plot invented by the editor. My father found Wade and helped him unlock his potential, so he came here on his own initiative. Lin Hao hadn't even finished his words when Jonathan jumped up in panic. "What a joke. How dare you come to this world on your own initiative? We've all learned the idiom Yigong likes dragons. This guy surnamed Yi appears to like dragons, but he's actually afraid of their power and ultimately frightened to death. Jonathan is no different. He can draw himself into comics as a powerful captain of the universe, but he doesn't want those characters from comics or movies to appear before him. He's just an ordinary person, without devastating superpowers. Fear is human instinct. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405, what a terrible chapter title. Compared to positive human qualities like justice, kindness, and courage, fear is more universal. Everyone experiences fear, but not everyone understands gratitude and the need to repay kindness. Jonathan Hickman, upon hearing that a comic book character had the audacity to venture forth without authorization, was so frightened that he immediately discarded all romantic thoughts. This matter was more important than not expressing his feelings within his secretary. "How could you do this? How dare you do such a thing? We entrusted Eternity with the task of maintaining cosmic order. How dare it send you here without authorization?" Jonathan roared at Lin Hao. "What does it want? Rebellion?" Lin Hao's taint of humanity instilled in him an instinctive resistance and even anger at this blunt rebuke. However, Eternity's admonitions, as well as the function or divine authority that had separated from Eternity, compelled him to accept the situation silently, abandoning his anger. Because of a major event in the universe numbered Earth 199,999, my father sent Wade to bring me here to convey the message, Lin Hao replied coldly. "No matter what happens, you can't come to this world on your own initiative." Jonathan suddenly realized a major loophole in Marvel's past. They hadn't explicitly restricted characters from comics or movies from entering the real world. while the already licensed Deadpool and the soon-to-be licensed She-Hulk could only do so within specific gatherings, meaning they were confined to their own universes. Eternity was incredibly powerful. He could easily travel to other universes, even backtracking through time to find corresponding characters from the past or future, and then use them to enter the real world. It's like the current manifestation is Eternity's incarnation. And Eternity wasn't the only character capable of traversing the past and reaching the future. Eternity was relatively lawful, or rather, rigid. What if a few more characters like Deadpool, prone to violence, arrived? How would the staff and editors handle it? In this so-called real world, the ability of Marvel characters to escape into the real world had become a natural order. Therefore, Jonathan didn't find the mere fact of comic book characters escaping into the real world so shocking. His mind was now preoccupied with establishing new rules to curb such behavior and prevent them from escaping so easily. If this happens a few more times, he'll really get discouraged. Damn Karen Boone, if he hadn't started this, none of this shit would have happened. Jonathan was indignant. Although these new Deadpool series are selling well, and even make the character of Deadpool unique and attract a large number of fans, these credits have nothing to do with him. Karen Boone is an independent editor, and the series he created are purchased directly by the publishing department without going through the editorial department. In addition, he has a certain degree of fame, so he doesn't even need to go through the review. After Deadpool Slaughters the Marvel Universe became a big hit, his weight in the eyes of Marvel bosses became even more important, and they even considered letting him ghostwrite the movie script. There are enemies in the same industry. The more popular Deadpool Slaughters the Marvel Universe is, doesn't it seem that the characters created by these editors are incompetent? The name Deadpool Slaughters the Marvel Universe has a strong smell of gunpowder, and it might be an idea given by the DC editorial department. In the world of capital, reputation doesn't matter. As long as a work sells, even if they slaughter the characters, or even directly the Marvel boss, he'll happily pose as the victim for publicity. It's all about making money, isn't it? Seeing this guy preoccupied with anger, Lin Hao grew impatient. He directly transmitted the image from Eternity to Jonathan through his psychic powers. Jonathan clutched his head, feeling a surge of pain, but in his consciousness, he saw clouds floating in the sky and a large number of strange Asian faces standing on them. What the hell? What is this? Magic or technology? Jonathan Hickman was the author of the comic book Agents of SHIELD. He also created Zheng Xian, the character with a Japanese samurai hairstyle. So, it was clear what this thing was. Neither. It's a spell from Eastern mythology called soaring in the clouds and driving the mist. Lin Hao showed off the information he had just found online, deliberately pronouncing the 4 words in Chinese. Shit, which idiotic editor did this? Jonathan roared, furious. I'm going to fire him. Eastern culture must only appear in Marvel works with a few specious symbols, and must never promote any substantive content that would have a positive impact on potential enemy nations. This is Marvel's principle, and it's also politically correct. Not just Marvel, but all American media groups and entertainment industries must abide by this rule. This is the bottom line set by the federal government and serves the shared interests of the capitalist consortium, so no one dares to defy it. Don't think that such ridiculous freedom of speech and freedom of capital give the American propaganda and entertainment industries free rein. They're not stupid. How could they be so foolish as to speak well of a potential enemy nation? Would we speak well of Japan? Those already brainwashed by Japanese comics are fine. They no longer belong to us. My father and I also want to know why these Asians appeared in the Earth 199,999 universe, possessing abilities completely beyond their comprehension, Lin Hao stated. I hope you can notify the company's top management and investigate this as quickly as possible. The base universe has been disconnected from the Marvel multiverse, so Yang Heng has only seen the bait Lin Hao deliberately threw. His omnipotence can't penetrate the Marvel box and understand what those little demons brought from other worlds. Yang Heng, like Jonathan, currently suspects that an editor in the real world, brainwashed by Eastern culture, deliberately portrayed Lin Hao, leading to the appearance of these things in the Earth 199,999 universe. Lin Hao's ability to recruit players from the game console was also a superpower granted to him by this traitorous editor. Otherwise, if I, a mighty creator god, can't do it, how can you, a yellow-skinned monkey, do it? After listening to Lin Hao's explanation, Jonathan realized the seriousness of the situation. He ignored his secretary, who was lying on the ground in a dishevel, and hurried upstairs to report to his boss. This was a significant event. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was their future flagship, even surpassing the main comic book universe Earth 616 and the rebooted all-new Alien universe. This was because movies were far more profitable than comics. The comic book industry was currently struggling, with both international and domestic markets constantly undermined by Japanese comics. The once dominant market was now seeing a surge in national comics, and even the few publishers that had secretly supported it were struggling to survive, unable to provide support. Without this vast market, Marvel Comics gradually withered, even teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, barely surviving by selling copyrights. It wasn't until the breakout success of the movie Iron Man, which ushered in a new chapter in the cinematic universe, that Marvel finally revived itself, ultimately being sold to Disney for a high price, helping veterans like Stan Lee become billionaires. The explosive popularity of the cinematic universe attracted a new generation of fans, boosting sales of new comics. Seeing their dad was okay again, the sheepdogs perked up again, each one gloating over their knowledge of Marvel Comics and acting condescending in front of their compatriots. It's both ridiculous and pathetic. Chapter 406, The Desire of Marvel Executives. Jonathan Hickman rushed to his boss's office to meet with CEO Kevin Feige. Although Marvel Studios had been acquired by Disney, it remained an independent company, a subsidiary of the Disney umbrella. Boss, something terrible has happened. Seeing his trusted subordinate so frantic, Kevin waved his secretary and another executive who had come to report on their work to leave. Jonathan, I hope you can give me a good reason. The Ghost and Deadpool showed up in my office. They said something major had happened in the main movie universe. Wait, Kevin interrupted him, demanding, who is the Ghost? Deadpool was a huge name, already having 2 standalone feature films that had received positive reviews. After Disney acquired Fox, Marvel was developing new projects related to Deadpool, so Kevin, the boss, knew of him. But who is the Ghost? In this real world, fame wasn't determined by character power, only by profitable characters. The Ghost? If Jonathan hadn't mentioned it, Kevin wouldn't have known Marvel had created the character. Who's to blame for Marvel's plethora of characters over the years? The boss isn't just an editor constantly monitoring content creation, so how could he possibly know them all? She's Eternity's daughter in name only, but actually his clone, Jonathan quickly explained. Tisk, you creative people are so perverted, Kevin quipped. I can't even get as creative as you do. Comic characters often reflect the editor's personal vision, or even directly reflect a portion of the creator's consciousness. As the head of an entertainment company, Kevin already knew this. Sometimes, to secure a big-name editor or director, Kevin would inquire about their preferences and then cater to them. Isn't that how Lolly Island came about? Boss, this isn't the time for jokes, Jonathan said anxiously, not in the mood for his boss's dirty talk. They're in my office. I'd love for you to come over and meet them. No thanks. Linkson appeared directly in the Marvel CEO's office, Deadpool in hand. He looked Kevin Feige up and down, his brow furrowed. Are you the one who created us? Due to the unspoken rules, Kevin wasn't surprised by their appearance, much less aware of their authenticity. To be precise, I'm merely the president of this company, responsible for its management. The creators of your characters were our editors, specifically the late Mr. Stan Lee, dead. Linkson interrupted, a look of astonishment on his face. My father is the almighty creator god. How could his creator die? Of course, because this world has no gods, no magic, and no superpowers, Kevin replied with a smile, as if teaching a child. No superpowers. As he spoke, Linkson waved his hand, transforming the cabinets on the office wall into molecules, which then reassembled into new objects. Everything happened in an instant. When he was done, Linkson asked a question that reached Kevin and Jonathan's souls. What is this? With a resounding boom, thunder pierced the leaden clouds, breaking the shackles deep within their minds and opening a door they had never imagined. This Kevin and Jonathan briefly lost their ability to speak. Since we can come to this world and bring superpowers, why didn't Stan Lee notify my father when he died? My father would definitely have found a way to help him stay alive after he arrived. As Eternity's avatar, Linkson experienced more human nature than Eternity, thus learning to think like a human and understanding the desires of living beings. While the concept of enlightenment he represented didn't work in this real world, straightforward words no longer required enlightenment to understand. You Kevin and Jonathan were stunned. They hadn't considered this before. Although they had accepted that characters from comics and movies could emerge, they had never considered utilizing their abilities. This so-called real world had already been a Marvel box from the moment it appeared, and its inhabitants were naturally influenced by the real Marvel editors. If the editors didn't allow them to perceive it, they couldn't. However, this real world was endowed with the attributes of reality, allowing its inhabitants to think independently, a greater independence than even the characters within the Marvel multiverse. After hearing Lin Xian's story, Kevin and Jonathan didn't go deaf, let alone cry out the famous "What are you talking about?" Instead, they were thrilled, trembling with excitement. Yet, why not? Why didn't we think of this before? Haha, powerful superpowers. Endless life. It's all ours, just like suddenly discovering we possess a magic pen that draws whatever you want. Kevin and Jonathan's cognitive barrier was broken, and a sudden enlightenment dawned. No longer panicked or anxious, they cast eager glances at Lin Xian, as if wanting to devour him alive. Seeing his desire aroused, Lin Xian smirked, completely unconcerned with their eager gazes. So, now we should figure out why the cinematic universe is in trouble, right? Lin Xian had thus gained a certain degree of initiative. Kevin immediately pressed, "What's wrong with the cinematic universe?" Lin Xian waved his hand, transmitting the image into his consciousness. Is this an Eastern myth? Kevin was shocked. How could something like this even exist in the cinematic universe? It was he who decided to cast a bald nun in Doctor Strange, and then he hypocritically apologized to the Chinese audiences, saying he was sorry to his fans. What else could the sheepdogs do? Dad had apologized, so of course they'd forgive him. Go, gather all the editors in the editorial and script writing departments, and conduct a review. Kevin turned to Jonathan and ordered, his face solemn. Investigate everyone thoroughly, and pass all the checks, especially those Chinese employees. If this is truly the work of an employee, it's most likely them. This now affects not only the Marvel Cinematic Universe's profitability, but also their chances of obtaining superpowers and even immortality. Keep it confidential. Kevin finally gave Jonathan a meaningful look. Jonathan was stunned for a moment, then nodded firmly. Currently, only the two of them had discovered this. Only a fool would disclose it. Even then, they wouldn't have to wait until they possessed supreme superpowers. Not only can they achieve immortality, they also have the chance to become the king of the world. Disney is nothing. Can Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck jump out? Even if they do, can they grant immortality? Chapter 407, What is the method used by Marvel editors to create everything? Real world, Marvel's top brass suddenly launched an investigation that baffled employees. They're an entertainment company, and in the past, the most common investigations involved tax issues, often involving the IRS. This time, they're suddenly investigating values and cultural biases. Isn't that the kind of thing only authoritarian governments like to do? Although other company executives expressed doubts about the matter, Kevin Feige, the company's president, and Jonathan Hickman, the editor-in-chief responsible for content creation, pushed hard for it. The focus of the investigation was on Jonathan's editorial department, and other departments were just going through the motions, so there was no need to offend the president. After all, he was a popular figure, recognized by Disney, and such a small matter wouldn't shake his position. Within the editorial department, every editor had to pass muster, especially those of Asian descent, let alone those of Chinese descent. Over the past decade or so, with China's economic growth, it has surpassed Japan to become the world's second largest box office market. Hollywood studios are scrambling to capitalize on this growth, not only by incorporating numerous Chinese elements into their films and casting Chinese actors, but also by recruiting numerous Chinese individuals into behind-the-scenes roles like writing, directing, cinematographers, and editing. Unfortunately, yet inevitably, the US remains skeptical and prejudiced. The Chinese elements they insert are often misplaced, and even when Chinese actors have a significant role, they often seem to play a bit of a clown role. This clownish plotting aims to satisfy European and American audiences, vent their emotions, and maintain their arrogance. Chinese audiences, having initially enjoyed international recognition, have gradually come to understand the ugly face of Western countries and even culture as a whole, and are becoming less receptive. This is especially true as China grows stronger, leading to growing national confidence and a shift in cultural export. But given the scale of the second largest box office market, how can they not make a fortune? This is completely inconsistent with the spirit of capitalism. As a result, major Hollywood studios are recruiting creative consultants or publicity personnel who truly understand Chinese tastes, and are even directly appointing Chinese directors. They're trying to strike a balance between the grand strategy of cultural export and box office success. This has resulted in a number of excellent works that have raked in significant box office revenue from the Chinese market. Marvel Studios' previous Avengers series exemplifies this strategy of generating revenue and exporting culture. Consequently, over the past decade or so, Marvel has seen a significant increase in the number of Asian and even Chinese employees. Some are immigrants who grew up in America, while others are simply recent graduates from China. These high-achieving students believe they've caught up in a good era. Just think back to 30 or 40 years ago, when the predecessors, no matter how talented or prestigious their jobs in China, arrived in America, they had to start out washing dishes. Unlike them, they could land big jobs right away and brag to their parents during the Lunar New Year holiday, drawing widespread envy. Lin Hao's previous Marvel application was similar, so naturally, the android clone he left behind garnered significant attention. Mr. Wang, you've been with the company for 3.5 years, but you've never been home. Your records indicate you have family in China. The investigation launched by Marvel Studios was jointly led by a headhunter and security firm hired by Kevin Feige. America has a virtue, both good and bad. Government employees can take jobs in private companies after retirement and their confidentiality period ends. This is especially true for high-ranking officials from powerful agencies like the CIA and FBI, who are often scrambled to hire them for security or internal audits. The same goes for IRS tax officials. After leaving the company, they either join large corporations or start their own accounting firms. They're always lucrative. If it weren't for the lifetime tenure of the 9 Supreme Court justices, even more companies would be vying for them. Among the professionals Kevin Feige recruited this time were longtime CIA executives, experts in interrogation and intelligence analysis. Recognizing the immense value of the cinematic universe and its characters, what was the cost? His primary concern now was to uncover the source of the problem. Well, I video call my family every day. Lin Hao's android clone maintained his usual persona, shy and socially anxious, dodging the other person's intimidating gaze. After the Li Dai Tao Jiang plan was accomplished, the android clone Lin Hao deliberately left behind served only as a holding post to maintain his editorial role. So, 3.5 years later, his position had only risen from assistant editor to regular editor qualified to draw and paint. Such editors are common in any major anime production company. They're commonly known as ghostwriters or tool artists. While they hold the title of editor, they have no power over content or plot decisions. They are solely responsible for embellishing and retouching the creator's original manuscripts. Some even lack manuscripts, requiring them to design their own scenes and even dialogue based on the creator's storyboards. Even worse, unknown artists' works are co-opted by established, renowned authors, becoming hot sellers for over a decade. This position is the safest, unassuming yet incredibly important. With excellent drawing skills, one won't be optimized by Marvel's HR department, and a low-ranking position won't attract covetousness or unnecessary trouble. The key is being able to personally touch the artwork. These days, most published comics are created by ghostwriters, leaving the original artist's handwritten sketches relegated to collector's items. After all, the magic pen's power doesn't discriminate based on who's behind it, it's fairer than humans. A retired CIA official carefully observed the Asian artist named Wang Yuan and found his performance matched the personality profile and daily evaluations from colleagues. He mentally checked his identity but remained calm as he continued to ask more questions. Lin Hao's android clone was scrutinized for over half an hour, and naturally, no flaws were discovered. After all, the person possessing the magic pen's power is Lin Hao himself. Whenever editing permissions are needed, he personally performs the operation, erasing the beginning and the end with the power of time. It's impossible for ordinary people to detect it. Besides, all the abilities Lin Hao had acquired were brought by Little Devil from other worlds. They weren't drawn for him by Marvel editors. Linkson and Marvel's top brass were on the wrong track from the start. Of course, they couldn't have imagined Lin Hao possessing such an unreasonable cheat. They still didn't even know exactly what abilities Lin Hao possessed. I've checked interrogation records, work surveillance, daily behavior, and even had the editors report on each other. Jonathan's face was filled with fatigue. Still nothing. Can you really figure out who gave that Asian character those strange superpowers? Linkson expressed doubts about their actions after more than 2 weeks, but he didn't stop them. After all, time was meaningless to his father. If he could find a way here, he could immediately appear before Lin Hao and specifically strike him down. Shouldn't we first determine what actions the editors must take to effect change in the multiverse, or what is the specific method by which you create everything? Is it just a matter of drawing comics and making movies, or does it require publication and perhaps even a certain level of publicity? I'll keep writing today, 4 or 5 chapters. Chapter 408 right here, throw the zombie virus over. Lin Xian's words once again enlighten Kevin Feige and Jonathan Hickman. After all, according to the rules of the real world, they were just ordinary people, capable of creating works, not creating anything. They had previously assumed that a single editor's surreptitious sketch could materialize into the multiverse, allowing characters from the comic book universe to wreak havoc in the movie universe. Now, after Lin Xian's reminder, they realized that this was precisely how it should be. Their Marvel multiverse wasn't a free-for-all. Even if they paid for a ticket, they couldn't enter without their approval. You're right, we certainly overlooked this issue before. Recalling the previous 2 weeks of feeling like a headless fly, Kevin Feige glared at Jonathan Hickman, who could only bow his head and admit that it was all his own negligence. What else could be done? This was the workplace. To save face and demonstrate his self-worth, Jonathan immediately activated his thinking skills and grasped a key point. This requires a series of experiments. First, we need to maintain contact with the multiverse. Then, we'll find a less important universe to test. A few more experiments should reveal the answer. Let's do it, Kevin Feige agreed. Start with comics. He was a shrewd businessman who knew how to control costs. Although he might gain supernatural powers and even immortality in the future, they weren't there yet. Furthermore, comics required little investment, so he didn't even need to issue orders. Jonathan made his own decisions, and he was solely responsible for reviewing the performance of each department. For example, he'd determine which comics were released in the new year, which ones sold well, which ones didn't, and who would be rewarded and punished accordingly. If he personally managed everything, he wouldn't be able to reach the position of CEO. Compared to comics, movies require far more investment. Not only are they enormously expensive, but the process from project inception to filming, post-production, review, contacting theaters, and promotion and distribution takes years. Kevin Feige had no intention of making a global announcement. It was best for him to keep his supernatural powers to himself. Upon returning to the editorial office, Jonathan immediately convened a meeting with several editors, including Wang Yuan, a key technical expert. Even if he hadn't included Lin Hao's clone, with Arnim Zola's power, every move within the Marvel building would remain unnoticed by Lin Hao. I called everyone here today because we're planning to publish a new single-volume comic book, Jonathan announced, and the editors seated in the front row, who were qualified to create and sign content, became interested. All artistic creations rely on their work to speak for itself. Only when a work becomes popular can it gain recognition, and only with recognition can it bring financial value, leading to both fame and wealth. Besides established artists who already have enough fame but lack the energy to complete their work, who among the new generation doesn't need a chance to shine? Marvel is undoubtedly a major international platform, and being able to publish a work on it, even if the results are subpar, can elevate one's status. All new editors cherish such opportunities. After all, Marvel publishes a limited number of single-volume comic books each year, creating competition and requiring selection. Marvel wasn't happy to let incompetent youngsters mess with their superheroes. Who would be responsible if their reputation was tarnished? Ghostwriters like Lin Hao's clones were much calmer. The benefits wouldn't accrue to them. Only the 2 newly arrived young assistants were still full of ambition, trying to impress their bosses with their talent and determination, unaware that their skin color already determined their potential in America. The veterans sitting beside Lin Hao all cast sardonic glances at the youngsters, as if mocking their own past ignorance. Jonathan glanced around, taking in everyone's reactions, his lips curled with smug satisfaction. The privileges of status, gleamed through contrast, isn't that the best part of being a leader? Without this sense of superiority, wouldn't leadership be bland and boring? Okay, focus. Jonathan patted the presentation board beside him, motioning everyone to look at the string of letters and numbers he had written. Earth 2149, the 2 young assistants, both proud of their deep knowledge of the Marvel multiverse, immediately responded. This is the Marvel Zombie Universe. When they first applied for the job, they had flaunted their knowledge of Marvel's universe and characters to the interviewer, proving their pedigree as genuine comic fans. The company is planning a new standalone volume, specifically centered around the zombie universe, but set a bit earlier in time. Before the Cuban Missile Crisis, Jonathan began to outline some of the plot points he had in mind. The editor would then fill in the details, hand off the script and manuscript to the artist, and then finalize the publication. The process was the same as for previous comics, except this time they would maintain constant contact with Eternity, observing which steps would lead to changes in the corresponding universe, thus determining the method the editors would use to create everything. The zombie universe was chosen for several reasons. First, the zombie virus can appear in many different versions, and it can be linked to other normal universes, so even if it suddenly appeared in one universe, it wouldn't be out of place. This also provided a logical entry point for the new standalone volume. Secondly, the zombie universe already has a certain level of recognition, so a new standalone volume is logically plausible, unobtrusive, and inherently generates traffic, eliminating the need for extensive publicity. If the editor's creation of everything strategy truly requires a certain level of buzz to be effective, then gaining recognition for a new comic book storyline requires both time and significant publicity resources. Kevin Feige and Jonathan Hickman are currently most concerned about attracting the attention of Disney and even the American conglomerate. If they discover their intentions, control of the future and eternal connection will be lost to them. It's easy to imagine that if those people gain superpowers, Kevin and Jonathan will gain power equal to or even greater than their own. They're just slaves now, and they'll be slaves forever? How despicable. They are real people, not superheroes influenced by editorial whims. Only a fool would leak this rare opportunity to become king of the world, therefore, they must conduct this experiment quietly and without attracting attention. Promoting a new comic strip with such fanfare would be a win, proving they had a keen eye for talent. But if it flopped, they'd be punished by Disney, their parent company, and even risk leaks. Another crucial factor was that the zombie universe was already doomed, so if things went wrong, they could simply destroy it without any foreshadowing. No matter what problems arose during the experiment, a single apocalyptic attack could wipe the scene out, efficient and safe. These two were also worried about Eternity causing trouble. This apocalyptic attack was their trump card to keep Eternity in check, reminding it of its true creator. This guaranteed the plan would proceed, ensuring Eternity would eventually grant them extraordinary powers and immortality. At this point, they didn't know Lin Hao could broadcast their plan live, so when Jonathan finished, a glint of brilliance appeared in Lin Hao's clone's eyes. I remember there's a universe whose timeline coincided with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's choose that place and launch the zombie virus there. Chapter 409, The Omnipotent Eternal temporarily loses. In the main movie universe, Lin Hao's consciousness was receiving memories transmitted by Arnim Zola from different time periods. If it weren't for his peculiar brain, the sudden onslaught of information would be enough to make a normal person faint. The flow of time in the real world was completely different from that in the movie universe, with no fixed ratio at all, like the distinction between low-dimensional and high-dimensional worlds, irregular and unpredictable. It was only after Lin Hao spent 99 years at the end of time that he could accurately grasp the memories transmitted by Zola from different time periods. Earth 2149, haha, that's quite a good choice. Lin Hao wondered if the other party already knew about the existence of the Huaxia Alliance team, or if they had simply chosen randomly, specifically the universe where radioactive man Chen Lu resided. Originally, Wu Fengji, Chen Lu, and the Tao brothers were unaware of the designation of their own universe within the Marvel multiverse. After all, these designations were simply created by Marvel to facilitate readers' identification. Those living within the Marvel universe didn't need to know. For example, before the concept of Earth emerged, people living on Earth wouldn't call themselves Earthlings, nor would they need to call themselves so until they encountered aliens. Identities only became necessary after entering an unfamiliar environment and encountering outsiders. It's like the people of an ancient tribe, who rarely saw outsiders in their lives. Naturally, they didn't need to know which country they were in, nor did they have a concept of nation, viewing their tribe and its surroundings as the entire world. They didn't know, but the Time Variance Administration did, as it contained the number of each universe. After Lin Hao took control of the Time Variance Administration, he briefed his teammates on the situation and opened a portal to their respective universes, thus confirming their respective universes. Chen Lu's universe turned out to be Earth 2149, the infamous Marvel zombie universe, except that the zombie virus hadn't yet broken out at his time. There are several versions of the zombie virus outbreak. Some claim it originated with a wasp after her return from the quantum realm, others were brought by Magneto to eliminate humanity and establish a mutant-only world. There's also the story of the Sentinels, who brought the virus to Earth 2149 from Earth 91126, creating a closed time loop. The Sentinels' origin story was the most consequential. Zombified superheroes and villains spent decades infecting and consuming life across the universe, even collaborating to take down Galactus, one of Marvel's 5 gods, devouring him whole, a legacy of his own. Later, these zombie superheroes discovered a time machine and continued to infect other universes, eventually arriving at Earth 91126. Spider-Man transformed Sandman, exploiting his fleshless nature to create an anti-zombie weapon. He ultimately killed all the zombies except the Sentinels. To prevent the zombie virus from spreading further, the observers returned the Sentinels to Earth 2149, blocking them before the virus appeared, creating a time loop. Upon learning of Marvel's top brass plan, Lin Hao immediately opened a portal. However, instead of informing Chen Lu, he brought Deadpool, who was enjoying himself on Xander, his base universe, over. Being in the main movie universe, Lin Hao's actions were clearly observed by the omnipotent Eternal. Yet, Eternal remained steadfast. While holding Deadpool in one hand, he maintained his gaze on the outer space. Yang Jian and the Monkey King, standing beside him, also tightened their weapons. Eternal refused to act rashly without first understanding how Lin Hao had killed one of his clones. Furthermore, he was accompanied by 2 powerful figures outside the Marvel Universe, and his methods were unknown. After waiting for 2 minutes, seeing that Eternal was still feigning death, Lin Hao ignored him and patted Deadpool's butt. This was the code they had agreed upon. By hitting the button with a specific force and frequency, Deadpool would instantly transport Lin Hao to a sea of pink bubbles leading to the real world. You stay here and keep an eye on the other Deadpool. If you find him, kill him, little bitch. You dare betray the great Deadpool alliance, Wade assured Lin Hao, patting his chest. Boss, don't worry. If that Canadian tiger skin egg dares to come, we'll destroy him immediately. Wade was confident, as Lin Hao had taught him many other powers, especially the co-killing Grey Bone, which was specifically designed to counter the self-healing factor. His strength had greatly increased. This place is forever inaccessible. Only the 2 of you can go at this time. Director Lin would never trick his own men into going to battle, and he always considered them for themselves. Marvel's top brass is trying to get Eternity to grant them superpowers and endless lifespans, but they're also afraid of Eternity's power and won't easily grant him that power. So rest assured, your only enemy is the other Deadpool. It's a piece of cake. Wade had recently learned some Chinese, and perhaps because the female teacher was quite excited during the lecture, his pronunciation was heavily accented. If anything happens, just return to base camp immediately. It's okay if you bring the enemy with you. I've got a backup plan, boss. You're so nice to me. How about I give myself to you? Get lost. Lin Hao slapped him hard on the butt again. This time, it was Wade who grabbed Lin Hao, piercing the air with one hand and throwing him out. Lin Hao himself had no way of entering or exiting this strange sea of bubbles. The Time Variance Administration portal only worked within the multiverse and couldn't connect to the real world, where even Eternity couldn't enter. However, he could only assign tasks within his base universe and this sea of bubbles to keep the omniscient and omnipotent Eternity from learning. Yang Hang saw Deadpool taking Lin Hao away, and guessed they'd likely gone to a mysterious dimension he couldn't reach. He immediately grasped Lin Hao's intentions. He can actually maintain contact with the real world. This shocked Yang Hang, because even he couldn't do it. If Lin Xin had completed his mission, he would surely have sent Deadpool back as planned to deliver the message. Then, no matter which universe Deadpool appeared in, Yang Hang would have been able to immediately transport him, leaving Lin Hao no time to react. Unexpectedly, the other party had actually been able to contact the real world, and he, the omnipotent creator god, had actually lost the intelligence. This is trouble. For the first time in countless years, Yang Hang felt defeated. It seemed that Lin Hao had left the movie universe. But for a being who could manipulate time, this window of opportunity was meaningless. Yang Hang had seen countless times the scene where, upon his appearance, Lin Hao would appear with a smile, and then chaos would follow, with nothing visible. There was great terror in this chaos. Nanchang had a fireworks show tonight, and it was trending all over the internet. Over 10 kilometers along the Ganjiang River, it was filled with people. But I didn't go to see it. Just to fulfill my promise to my brothers. So, can you please vote for me? P.S. I'm still writing. Chapter 410, Stay Away from Pornography, starting with you. Lin Hao had returned to the Shenmiao Bureau base in the base universe and appeared directly before Chen Lu, who was cultivating. After Lin Hao's treatment, all of Chen Lu's cells affected by the nuclear radiation had recovered. He had lost the ability to absorb and release nuclear radiation, but had regained a healthy and strong body. He was currently cultivating with Lin Hao, using his professional abilities to practice various Taoist techniques adapted by Lin Hao. Although he was following in the footsteps of his predecessors, the results were good and the progress was encouraging. Chen Lu had no intention of achieving the Hunun Dalordeo fruit to reopen the earth, water, wind, and fire like Lin Hao had. He simply wanted to become stronger so he could return to protect the country. This was just like his original intention when he was exposed to nuclear radiation. Something's happened. Marvel executives are planning to open a new comic book volume for experiments. The story takes place in your universe, and they plan to release the zombie virus in advance. After hearing Lin Hao's words, Chen Lu was not surprised at all and simply sneered. Then I'll go back and inform the country to prepare in advance. Let's go together. This is an experiment by Marvel executives, and it's also a precious opportunity for us to witness their methods. With the power to manipulate time, scenes in the main movie universe can be completely paused, allowing for seamless connection no matter how long one spends in another universe. Besides, the zombie virus is an interesting thing. It doesn't make sense that only Marvel can abandon it, but not Director Lin, right? Where the enemy goes, I can go too. With these little cuties, Lin Hao can find new ways to harvest the resentment of living beings. Let's go. With a wave of his hand, a portal opened, and Lin Hao and Chen Lu stepped through. The two appeared in the Pacific Ocean of Earth 2149, each stepping on a cloud. Why are you here? Chen Lu looked at Lin Hao in surprise. Why not go directly to Beijing? Are you kidding? Director Lin actually opened the wrong door? Lin Hao scratched his head and gave an awkward smile. Although I'd love to meet him, it's forbidden at this time. There's something terrifying going on, so you go alone. I can pass on everything I teach you. As long as someone can learn it, the more the better. With him and his group of seasoned veterans keeping watch, nothing bad can happen. Chen Lu didn't understand, but he knew Lin Hao's formidable abilities. Seeing him so wary, he felt a chill in his heart and nodded solemnly. Okay, I'll handle it properly. Although Chen Lu had spent considerable time in the base universe, Lin Hao sent him back to shortly after his departure to avoid any complications. As for the minor matter of Dr. Chen suddenly mastering flight after only being away for less than half a day, he believed Dr. Chen could handle it. Lin Hao didn't return to China to join in the fun, but headed straight for America. He didn't bring more people with him this time. After all, the zombie virus that could infect the entire universe was a bit mysterious, and without fully understanding its composition, Lin Hao didn't dare to expose anyone else. As for myself, with the power of time as my shield, even the most potent virus can be dealt with by simply returning my body to its pre-infection state, accelerating its aging and extinction. Could the zombie virus be capable of infinite evolution, rendering it immortal? Then, its value would be immense. In the early 1960s, America had just emerged from the 1950s. After the war, fought in the wrong place, at the wrong time, and against the wrong opponent, the Americans had fallen silent for a while. As the Red Bear gradually regained its institutional vitality, the post-World War II world order shifted from unipolarity to bipolarity. America's dream of world domination was shattered, and the country began to feel the pressure of the Red Bear in every aspect. You launch a satellite, I launch one. You send a human to space, I send one too. Unfortunately, America, the so-called leader of civilization, lost both of these things in a row. Furious, the Americans announced the Apollo project, which lasted 11 years and cost $25.5 billion, approximately 0.57% of the nation's GDP and 20% of its total scientific research and development spending that year. While many questioned the Apollo program's authenticity, the mainstream international consensus was unanimous. Even the Red Bear, the nation's greatest rival at the time, never questioned its authenticity. Lin Hao didn't bother to question it. After all, in the year or two since Yuri's launch, American trust in the federal government had eroded significantly. While their astronauts followed suit, a delay was always a delay. People only remember the first, not the second. American society remained riled until the end of 1962, When American confidence swelled once again after the Red Bear was forced into submission through sheer force. Who launched first was, after all, a matter of appearances, but forcing the Red Bear into submission through military force was a real, practical solution. This incident clearly demonstrated America's superiority over Russia, a fact recognized worldwide. Lin Hao appears in 1963, the missile crisis long past. American society is revitalized, and everyone from the elite to the poor basks in the pride of being citizens of the world's most powerful nation. Since they're trying to capitalize on the crisis, Lin Hao wonders, could it be that Cuba launched missiles? The only connection between this crisis and the zombie virus is the missile crisis, which Ant-Man and the Wasp jointly resolved. This incident caused the Wasp to be lost in the quantum realm, and upon her return, she brought a zombie virus with her. While the crisis in the film takes place in the 1990s, it's actually a plot that has already appeared in the comics. In the real world, the missiles never launched, yet the Marvel editor's world uses a missile that has already launched to highlight the greatness of the superheroes. Lin Hao descends onto the streets of New York, hiding to avoid attracting unwanted attention. After peeking into the memories of a few random Americans, Lin Hao obtains the answer. It actually launched. This is ridiculous. If America were so weak that it needed superheroes to stop the missile, the giant Red Bear's paw would have already set foot on American soil. But this is an illogical world. After confirming the missile had been launched, Lin Hao immediately calculated Pim Hank's current location. Pim Hank was of the same generation as Howard Stark. Even if he was slightly younger, he would have been in his 40s and his 60s. As for why he could live another 60 years, it was probably due to his decades of chastity. So, if a man wants to live a long life, he must exercise self-control. Stay away from lust, starting with you. In the blink of an eye, Lin Hao, having located Pim Hank, appeared before him. Dr. Hank was now in a state of depression, a mere corpse. His love for his wife was truly touching. It seems the Wasp here is indeed missing. Lin Hao wasn't sure if the zombie virus would definitely be brought back by the Wasp. After all, a zombie sentry could also have descended from the skies over New York. After that, he kept his eyes on Pim Hank, until one day Howard Stark from this universe came to him. The old man, who was already in his 50s, was in good condition and still had a new girlfriend every week. It was not until a few years later that he met Tony Stark's mother, and at the age of 60, he made his wife pregnant and gave birth to Tony Stark. Hey, Pim, Howard, a playboy, could not understand Pim's mood. He wished that every girlfriend would leave decisively. However, true love always moves people. Even Howard admired the infatuated Pim. I have good news to tell you. I have a new idea that may help you get your wife back. I will write again tomorrow. I won't stay up late in the new month. It's too tiring. Chapter 411, Has this Earthling always been like this? Real world were eager to understand the precise details of creation, and Lin Hao, observing from Earth 2149, also sought to understand the matter. Using memories returned by Arnim Zola, Lin Hao was able to witness the entire dynamics of Marvel's editors. He watched them finalize projects, discuss plots, and confirm and illustrate manuscripts, until the ghostwriters produced the final drafts, which were then submitted to the review department for approval and publication. Due to the different dimensionality of the two worlds, it's impossible to draw conclusions about timelines. Therefore, Lin Hao couldn't determine whether the changes in Earth 2149 originated from the moment the editors put pen to paper or the moment of publication. If communication channels remained open, and the Canadian Deadpool could bring information back to the multiverse, Eternity would be able to confirm this point. Since the multiverse is his body, his omniscience would naturally allow him to see, from a macroscopic perspective, when a single hair on his body grows. Currently, Lin Hao can't extend his perception across the multiverse. He can't even cover a single universe or even a single galaxy. A privileged person's clairvoyance cheat, no. For example, Eternal could clearly see Lin Hao and Chen Lu appear in the Earth 2149 universe, and could also see Lin Hao lurking in America. However, he dared not act rashly, and unable to establish contact with the real world, he could only wait and see. By blocking communication channels, Lin Hao temporarily negated Eternal's clairvoyant advantage. Thus, under the watchful eyes of these two powerful beings, Pim Hank and Howard Stark of this universe acted out the just-written script by Marvel's editors. Upon hearing the other party's claim of a way to bring his wife back, Pim, in his dejected state, immediately leaped over, grabbing Howard and demanding, "Tell me. What's the method?" Although he despised the Playboy's character, Pym recognized his intelligence. He would often come up with ideas that were incomprehensible to ordinary people, only to be proven true. This was one of the reasons for Pym's dislike. Pym admitted that he was jealous. The more accomplished a scientist is, the more they must confront the disparity in talent. The gulf between ordinary and elite scientists is simply impossible to bridge with effort, and the same is true between elite scientists and those who go down in history as great scientists. Pym is at best elite, but the Playboy before him has the potential to be great. Howard Stark in the comics is truly formidable, not only inventing a variety of powerful armors but even building a time machine, engaging in battles with formidable enemies across diverse timelines and universes. In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Legend of the Shield, he becomes a true protagonist, destroying the millennia-old Brotherhood of the Shield, inheriting the legacy, and founding S.H.I.E.L.D. I have some new ideas about the quantum realm. With the advent of the multiverse and time machines, quantum mechanics has become a buzzword in the Marvel Universe, regardless of era. As the saying goes, when in doubt, turn to quantum mechanics. The ensuing plot plays like a rehash of the first half of Avengers 4. Howard and Pym return to SHIELD and, using a collection of outdated equipment, manage to concoct a time machine, looking at Pym Hank's Ant-Man suit, which is nearly identical to the one worn by Alan Shepard 2 years earlier. Lin Hao couldn't help but laugh at the Marvel editors' lack of creativity. They just took it and used it. With the industrialization of American comics, settings, plots, and even character designs have been borrowed from each other, leading to a streamlined approach to comic creation. As long as the core story creators come up with an idea that captivates readers, the assembly line takes care of the rest. Consequently, you rarely see long-running American comics that tell a single story. It's a thankless task and wastes the author's time. American comics have long relied on this model of filling their worlds with single volumes to convey their values to the world. I believe this is why American comics have always been outshined by Japanese comics. They lack the kind of authors who dedicate their lives to telling a single story. Though outdated in style, it served the same purpose as Tony Stark's device in Avengers 4. After several experiments, Pym successfully entered the quantum realm and returned. Great, Pym excitedly thanked Howard sincerely for the first time. Thank you for giving me hope, the rest is up to you. The quantum realm is no smaller than our universe. If you want to find Janet there, Howard shook his head slightly and sighed, you'll have to be prepared for a long battle. I'm not afraid. Pym's eyes, seeing hope again, were filled with determination. The Playboy couldn't understand the infatuated man's mindset and could only shake his head and leave. For Howard, this was merely the implementation of an idea that had suddenly occurred to him. After completing his tool duties, Howard returned to his normal life. Pym, however, continued to enter and exit the quantum realm, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Having shrunk several times, he had grown accustomed to the discomfort of his body. The only factors limiting his exploration frequency were the consumption rate of Pym particles and the production cost. Anyone who's read the comics knows that these repetitive plots typically only take up 2 or 3 frames, never more than a page. Over 10 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Pym was still busy fishing for treasure. Back home, Chen-Lu had already revealed Lin Hao's scientific cultivation technique to the organization. He had selected a group of soldiers from the military to study under him, and those with the best skills had already made some progress. After confirming human-to-human transmission, the newly emerged nation across the ocean quietly launched a terrifying mobilization, ushering in an era of universal cultivation. These changes naturally reached Lin Hao, and they too were observed by Eternal. However, Eternal was currently focused on establishing contact with the real world, and showed little concern for the changes unfolding within China within the Earth 2149 universe. He controlled time and space within the multiverse, a collective consciousness, capable of annihilating entire universes with a single thought. What could the suddenly powerful Chinese do to him? They could be annihilated with a flick of the wrist. Finally, 2 weeks after Howard helped Pym build his time machine, Pym finally received a signal from Janet. Janet Dine, known as the Wasp, was also a scientist. After being lost in the quantum realm, she didn't give up. She used the equipment on her Wasp suit to create a signal transmitter, continuously broadcasting signals. 2 days later, Pym finally located the source of the signal. Equipped with a time shuttle and sufficient Pym particles, He plunged into the quantum realm without hesitation. Time in the quantum realm differed from that in the outside world, so he retrieved Janet in seconds. "Janet, Pym was overcome with excitement, turning to give his wife a warm hug and unleash the anxiety and longing he had accumulated over the past few days. But just then, a portal suddenly appeared. Lin Hao kicked Janet, fresh from the quantum realm, into the portal. Beyond the portal was the ruins of the Avengers compound in the New York suburbs of the main film universe. Lin Hao could sense that Janet had developed an extremely active virus. This sudden turn of events left Pym bewildered and brought an eternal silence to the multiverse. Has this Earthling always been like this? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412 Tony, this damn familiar feeling. Janet, an already enraged Pym Hank watched helplessly as the fire extinguisher was abruptly kicked away, his rage surging. Brothers, everyone understands. A man being interrupted at this moment can cause serious problems. Furious, Pym rushed towards the nearby portal without a second thought. Lin Hao didn't stop him, instead raising his head and waving his finger at the air. "Little brat, come over here if you dare." Eternal remained silent. Because his communication channel was severed, he had no idea that the events in Earth 2149 were actually an experiment conducted by Marvel executives. He simply watched Lin Hao's every move with surprise and wariness. The disappearance of Pym Hank and Janet Dine had little impact on the entire Earth 2149 universe. This made Lin Hao, who was desperately trying to conceal his own secrets and guard against a backlash from the entire universe, feel a bit like punching cotton. Could it be that the Marvel editors can only change the universe by adding new standalone volumes? And they can't even monitor it in real time? Lin Hao's sudden kick wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Firstly, he wanted to stick to his original intention and continue to cause trouble for the Americans, and secondly, he wanted to test the specific manifestations of Marvel editors' influence on the multiverse. Marvel executives were currently awaiting the results of their experiment. Seeing their carefully prepared origin story slammed away with a single kick wouldn't make them sit idly by. According to Eastern fantasy, if someone openly defied the will of heaven, the heavens would likely send down a thunderbolt to smite the evil. But no. Lin Hao waited for several more minutes, still no punishment. Even if the Heavenly Deo servers were lagging, they couldn't be this slow, right? After testing the waters, Lin Hao boldly speculated that Marvel editors truly couldn't monitor the multiverse in real time, not even for the new plots they were currently creating and focusing on. Could it be that Marvel's Genesis is actually a one-time deal? Once a work appears, the corresponding plot unfolds, and a new universe emerges, but they can neither monitor nor interfere, and can only fill in the gaps with new works. Sounds a lot like online novels. This speculation left Lin Hao perplexed, but he had no real solution, so he could only make bold assumptions and carefully verify them. After a moment's deliberation, Lin Hao pulled out the Time Variance Administration's handheld game console and contacted Chen Lu. "Old Chen, I've kicked the virus source back to the main movie universe. Keep an eye on it. Contact me immediately if anything happens." After taking down the Time Variance Administration, Lin Hao redeveloped a handheld game console as a communication tool for allies and subordinates entering the multiverse, also allowing them to open portals at any time. "Okay, I'll keep a close eye on it," Chen Lu nodded. "Be careful," Lin Hao reminded him. Chen Lu, unfazed, smiled calmly. "I will quickly spread all the Taoist techniques I've mastered. Unless eternity annihilates the world, even if I'm eliminated, I'll have left a valuable legacy for the nation." Having participated in the initial suppression of the single eternity, Chen Lu knew exactly what he would face after leaving his base universe and Lin Hao's protection. Eternity could come at any moment, even wiping him out with a single thought. As a Marvel native, if Chen Lu's soul were erased, even if Lin Hao cloned a new body using his pre-prepared blood, he wouldn't be able to restore it. Not even the Infinity Stones could do that, and even a soul wouldn't travel to the realm of death, because he was the omnipotent eternity. But Chen Lu possessed the dedication of a typical Chinese scientist of his time, willing to sacrifice his life solely to contribute to the nation. "Take care. I'll be back to check on the situation. I doubt Marvel will have just one virus source." Lin Hao, understanding Chen Lu's choice, refrained from offering any admonitions that would insult his resolve. With that, he stepped through the portal and emerged into the main movie universe. Time here still lingered at the moment Ivan Vanko taunted Tony Stark, who was deaf, and shouted his famous line. The sudden appearance of the portal and the two figures that emerged from it, left the alert Avengers slightly bewildered. Janet, Pym Hank called out his wife's name. Hearing the voice, the Tony Starks of both universes turned their heads and saw a familiar face. So young? The two Tonys exclaimed almost in unison. Damn, another new universe, X2 said. The Wasp, who had been unknowingly infected with a zombie virus, absorbed the momentum of Lin Hao's kick and stood up, shaking her head in confusion. Gazing at the surrounding ruins, Janet looked bewildered. Where's this, Janet? Pym rushed over, looking his wife up and down, anxiously checking for injuries. Seeing Lin Hao appear shortly afterwards, Ivan Vanko hurried over to join him. Lin Hao immediately soared into the sky, and a pristine white cloud rose from his feet, lifting the two of them aloft. Director, this is... Ivan Vanko glanced at Pym and Janet, who had suddenly appeared, a hint of confusion in his eyes. Don't worry, wait and see. Lin Hao led him back to the cloud, still 100 meters above. Upon returning, he asked Yang Jian, True Lord, do you know any solid formations? Ideally, the kind that's impervious to anything. Yang Jian, puzzled, nodded. Yes, please protect us, Lin Hao said frankly. A flicker of surprise crossed Yang Jian's eyes, but he didn't ask any more questions. He pulled out his Kyankin bag and took out some materials for the formation. As several small flags grew larger in the wind and landed around the cloud, a thin, transparent, yet safe membrane appeared out of thin air, enclosing everyone. Just as they finished, something unexpected happened on the ground below. Janet, who was recounting the pain of separation to Pym, suddenly rolled her eyes and trembled violently, the blood vessels beneath her skin writhing like earthworms. The upper and lower rows of teeth clashed repeatedly, making a terrifying clattering sound. Saliva flowed from his mouth, and a low growl emanated from his throat. Janet, what's wrong with you? Pym was horrified and quickly hugged his wife, saying with concern, Don't scare me, doctor, I'll take you to see a doctor. With a snap, Janet, transformed into a zombie, bit through Pym's neck. Blood vessels and tracheal were severed, and Pym's eyes were filled with shock and bewilderment. Almost all of the zombie viruses brought back by the Wasp's first victims were Pym Hank, or her daughter or adopted daughter. The closer someone is, the more likely they are to escape this sudden harm. The scene before them not only left Pym, the victim, in deep agony, but also left the Avengers watching nearby dumbfounded. This feels damn familiar. Tony Stark from the base universe immediately activated his suit's defenses. The others were a step slower, because the next scene was even more shocking. Janet didn't spit out the meat in her mouth after biting off Pym's neck. Instead, she chewed it hard in front of all the Avengers and then swallowed it in big mouthfuls. The hunger from the zombies was completely aroused. Janet pounced on Pym again and tore the muscles on his body. The key is to eat it while it's hot. Pym, who was dying, had an incomprehensible sense of absurdity. In the end, as most of his neck and shoulders were bitten off, he lost all consciousness. Fuck, Scott Lang couldn't understand or accept the scene in front of him. These are his future father-in-law and mother-in-law. But now his mother-in-law actually ate his father-in-law in front of him, like a female mantis. Please, you are the Wasp, not the mantis. I went out to play during the day and will not go out tomorrow. I will write more. Everyone should go to bed early. Chapter 413 The Birth of Zombie Hulk. Watching the Wasp devour Pym Hank, the few remaining Avengers were filled with shock and confusion. Only Tony Stark, from the base universe, sensed a strange sense of familiarity. Trouble's coming, he returned to his girlfriend, Pepper Potts, bracing himself for the attack. Sure enough, the Wasp, having ripped her husband to shreds, raised her head and stared at the living around her. She was still hungry. Even having devoured a grown man, it was far from enough to satisfy the hunger that stalked her heart. In the blink of an eye, the Wasp suddenly vanished from the Avengers' sight. Gone, the other Avengers gasped in surprise, but Scatterlang, playing Ant-Man, immediately realized, shouting, She's shrunk. The two Tony Starks fared best, as the AI embedded in their Iron Man suits automatically adjusted the magnification of their scopes, allowing them to detect a figure smaller than a mosquito in the air. Despite the reduction in size, the Wasp suit's equipment remained functional, and the Wasp's strength and speed remained unchanged. She launched herself at the nearest living being. It was none other than Bruce Banner, who had merged with the Hulk. He was the largest, the meatiest, and the most edible. Driven by instinct, the Wasp pounced on what she considered the perfect meal. After merging with the Hulk, Bruce lost his rage. While his rational mind allowed him to better utilize his skills and tools, as a scientist, Bruce naturally abhorred combat. Having not studied combat techniques in recent years, his fighting instincts were clearly inferior to the combative Hulk. This resulted in Bruce's reaction times being much slower than the instinctive Hulk. "Bruce, look out," Tony shouted from the main film universe, leaping forward. However, the Wasp was closer and ultimately outpaced him. Smaller than a mosquito, the Wasp dove headfirst into Bruce's skin, tearing through flesh with her zombie-like teeth, burrowing into his body like a tiny insect. Bruce howled miserably, two distinct tones in his voice, one filled with breathtaking rage. The shrunken Wasp tore at Bruce's flesh, but the disparity in size meant she couldn't even devour a finger-sized portion of flesh after several tens of seconds. Meanwhile, the zombie virus carried by the Wasp had already entered Bruce's brain through her bloodstream. The Hulk's consciousness, previously suppressed by Bruce's mind, was stimulated by the virus and suddenly awakened from its dormant state. Madness, rage, bloodlust, and brutality merged together, amplifying the Hulk's rage and frenzy. The zombie virus affected not only the Hulk's mind but also Bruce's, rendering his madness subdued by reason impossible. Roar, the green figure roared resoundingly. Its eyes were bloodshot, and its 2 rows of teeth, strengthened like the most formidable weapons in the world, filled its maw with thick saliva. His red eyes darted rapidly as Hulk regained consciousness. Without a word, he thrust his fingers into the wound the Wasp had opened, stirring vigorously, attempting to dislodge the worm burrowed into the flesh. However, the worm sank deeper and deeper into the wound, and the pain intensified Hulk's rage. Losing his mind, he thrust his other index finger into the wound as well, then yanked with both hands, tearing a bloody hole. Then, Hulk thrust his entire right hand into his abdomen, following the pain to the shrunken Wasp, forcibly grasping her and pulling her out. The brutality of the move also resulted in him extracting a section of her large intestine. Hulk clenched his fist, crushing the Wasp beneath his palm, then lowered his head and roughly stuffed the intestine back into his abdomen. A series of events unfolded in a flash. Bruce, Tony, who had already rushed over, shouted with concern and a hint of wariness. "Roar," Hulk roared in response. After being infected by the zombie virus, the Hulk felt something besides rage. Hunger. An insatiable hunger. Seeing Tony right in front of him, the Hulk took a powerful step and dodged, his massive hands like a palm leaf fan grabbing from both sides. Tony instinctively tried to dodge, but the zombie virus not only inflicts an insatiable hunger but also enhances its physical fitness. Tony misjudged the Hulk's speed and wasn't prepared to kill Bruce. A moment of carelessness allowed the Hulk to grab the Tony of the main universe. The immense force caused the armor's shell to deform, violently destroying countless nano-components. "Sir, energy is rapidly depleting, and the defense system is overloaded." Hearing Friday's report, Tony sensed a sense of danger. After grabbing him, the Hulk stuffed him into his mouth like a hot dog. With a snap, the Hulk bit down on Tony's left shoulder, his strong teeth colliding violently with the equally strong armor. If Tony hadn't twisted his body and tilted his head at the last moment, it wouldn't have been his shoulder that was bitten, not his neck. He might have been bitten off like a lobster, his head ripped off in one bite. Use all your energy to hold his mouth and hands together. In this critical moment, Tony came up with a plan to save himself. Strip off the armor, leaving only 2 engines. Take me away. The nano-components automatically deformed, climbing onto the Hulk's teeth and hands, transforming into self-powered braces and handcuffs. Countless small engines activated, forcibly forcing the Hulk's teeth and hands apart. Tony, having gained the opportunity, immediately used the engine's help to float backwards. By then, the other Avengers finally recovered from their shock and reluctantly accepted the reality. Thor raised Stormbreaker, gathering a torrent of lightning and hurling it at the Hulk. Carol, clutching the Infinity Gauntlet, charged forward and delivered an uppercut, sending the Hulk flying into the air. Trap him first, Tony from the main movie universe retreated. Under Friday's command, a new suit of armor was launched from a low-Earth orbit satellite, which would soon reprotect its owner. Bruce is likely infected with an unknown virus, brought here by Janet Dine from another universe. Tony looked up at Lin Hao, high in the clouds. The Asian man had simply emerged from the portal without disguising himself. What is he trying to do? Did he create the virus? Tony from the main movie universe didn't recognize Lin Hao, but Tony from the base universe felt a strange sense of familiarity about the Asian man in the white coat. I feel like I've seen this guy somewhere before. To facilitate his instructions, Lin Hao had been using a familiar figure and appearance from his colleagues at the SHIE, instead of returning to his original form. But Tony still felt a sense of familiarity. Perhaps it was a tacit understanding between the yellow ones. But now was clearly not the time to delve into the matter. Tony had to focus his full attention on the now zombified Hulk. Tony, from the base universe, had become a skilled doctor after years of illness. He could guarantee that this matter wouldn't be resolved so easily, and there would definitely be new excitement later. Idiot, don't focus on someone you have no power to touch, Tony lectured Tony. This matter isn't over yet. Chapter 414, The Eternity of Omnipotence is a Joke. Tony Stark from the base universe had guessed correctly. This was just the beginning. Thor and Big Mom Carol each trapped the enraged zombie Hulk in midair, awaiting the sturdy box Iron Man sent from a satellite. Once inside, they would attempt to research the virus and rescue their teammates. While the zombie Hulk was contained, the Wasp, whom he had just crushed and discarded, was not completely dead. Her Wasp suit, brutally destroyed by the Hulk, prevented her from returning to her normal human form. However, this provided her with more food, smaller than a mosquito. With smaller size, comes a smaller appetite. While hunger is never satisfied, a smaller intake allows the same amount of food to last longer. Trapped in the rubble of the battlefield, the Wasp stopped charging at the Avengers because she found more food nearby. Rats, cockroaches, earthworms, and centipedes, blown away by the aftermath of the previous bombing in the battle, revealed the Earth's true form. The small animals lingering in the soil became the Wasp's new targets. These critters were no match for the Wasp, who, despite a reduced size, still possessed the strength and speed of a full-grown adult. Undoubtedly, she dominated the food chain. She began devouring the small creatures relentlessly, taking a bite if she found them tasty, and scurrying away if she found them unpalatable. Some perished, while others, like the earthworms and centipedes, survived even with only a fraction of their bodies remaining. The zombie virus's potent infectiousness exploded. Driven by hunger, the infected critters devoured the surrounding animals, spreading rapidly. When a zombie rat burrowed into a nearby river, the fate of Earth in the film's main universe was sealed. The great sage, his eyes gleaming with golden light, gazed upon the frantic critters on the ground and the active zombie virus within them. This plague is so ferocious, Lin Hao pondered for a moment, then suddenly waved his hand. The clouds vanished from New York, rapidly flying across North America and the Pacific Ocean, arriving in China, the film's main universe. Please, Master, move the formation to the land. Yang Jian, also observing the ferocious zombie virus with his third eye, understood Lin Hao's purpose. It's a piece of cake. The immortal formation instantly enveloped the land of China. Lin Hao turned to his colleagues from the SHIE bureau behind him and ordered, "You take the spaceship to the capital, identify yourself to the authorities, tell them that the zombie virus has arrived, and ask them to enter a state of emergency." Zhao Yu looked around blankly when he saw Director Lin talking to him, pointed at himself and asked, "Let me take the lead. If you are willing to cooperate, then don't do it. As for those who don't care about the people, the same thing applies. Arrest them if you should, and kill them if you should." Zhao Yu hurriedly looked at Thanos on the side and suggested, "How about letting Director Me come with me? Are you crazy?" Lin Hao glared at him and scolded, "Half of the life in this universe has been wiped out by Thanos. If you let him go, will others believe that he is here to save people?" Zhao Yu smiled awkwardly. "We have a spaceship and hundreds of action team members, what are you afraid of?" Lin Hao scolded. "I'll have Jiang Ming take Shushan over there. If you can't do it, just tell me, and I'll go back and get someone else." "I can do it," Zhao Yu shuddered, immediately declaring, "Don't worry, Director, I'll get the job done. It was just ruthless, just killing a few chickens to scare the monkeys. Anyway, the detailed administrative matters would be handled by the government of this universe. He only needed to supervise. If he quit now, he'd forget about being with Director Lin." With that, Zhao Yu boarded the Shunmiao Bureau's spaceship with his special operations team and over 200 newly resurrected colleagues, heading for the capital. The immortal formation Yang Jian had set up stretched from the Earth's surface to its core. Even the zombie virus couldn't break through. Even the theoretically omnipotent Eternal would take time to study. After all, it was a different system. Given enough time to react, Lin Hao would be there in a flash. After assigning their tasks, only Odin, Thanos, Loki, Vidin, and his minions, along with Yang Jian and the Great Sage, remained above the clouds, shrinking even further. After a moment's contemplation, Lin Hao suddenly waved to Thanos, "Let me use my gauntlet." Director Mie, puzzled, quickly removed the Infinity Gauntlet, stepped forward, and handed it to Lin Hao. "Since you want to play zombies, I'll play with you," Lin Hao sneered, staring into space. He took the Infinity Gauntlet and put it on. The originally large golden gauntlet shrank rapidly, fitting perfectly to Lin Hao's arm. Snap! With a snap of his fingers, an invisible wave instantly spread throughout the universe, centered on Earth. Half of all life, wiped out by Thanos 5 years ago, returned to the main movie universe. Eternity, the being above the multiverse, witnessed Lin Hao's actions and, by this moment, understood his purpose. After a period of silence, Eternity finally attacked Lin Hao for the first time. He drew a circle around the main movie universe's solar system, enclosing it in a thin membrane. Ultimately, Eternity did not leap out and attack Lin Hao directly. He wasn't afraid of Lin Hao. An abstract god devoid of much humanity didn't understand fear. He simply viewed the multiverse as his responsibility. Eternity was the embodiment of multiverse spacetime, the collective consciousness of the universe. The multiverse was himself. If he perished, the multiverse would perish with him. To uphold this responsibility, Eternity wouldn't act rashly without first understanding how Lin Hao had killed a single one of his cells. Like an intelligent program, after analysis and judgment, a higher priority instruction overrides a lower priority one. His responsibility to the multiverse outweighed the anger or loss of face caused by the death of a single cell. Yet, his omniscience could readily discern the consequences of the zombie virus spreading throughout the main movie universe. He didn't want to see an entire universe fall into silence, so he chose to trap the solar system and contain the zombie virus. Despite his supposed omniscience, Eternity, having received no response from the spirit, was unaware of the Marvel executives' plans, much less the importance of the main movie universe to Marvel Studios, and so he continued to make decisions based on his previous characterization. Sacrificing a small solar system to save the entire main film universe aligns with his values. While some concepts suggest that Earth is Eternity's heart, a heart losing blood is preferable to a body losing vitality. For the omnipotent Eternal, simply eliminating the source of the problem and recovery is instantaneous. Furthermore, the main film universe is merely one universe within the multiverse, a single cell within the multiverse. If the heart problem is with a single Eternal, the worst that can happen is that cell, but would that be a problem for the multiverse? There's actually a simpler solution: simply eradicate the zombie virus. Eternal chose not to resort to this tactic. More accurately, he didn't even consider it. Doesn't this contradict his omnipotence? The editors wouldn't allow it. The zombie universe was a brilliant idea Marvel's editors were so proud of. If Eternal had intervened directly, how would the plot have progressed? However, the destruction of the universe clearly contradicts the previously established characterization of Eternal as someone committed to preserving cosmic order. Could the all-knowing and all-powerful Eternal be incapable of dealing with a mere zombie virus? But if Eternal had to intervene in every crisis, how would the editors create grand spectacle in the future? Who cares? As long as the new comic is popular, the setting will be used to it. From this point of view, the omnipotent Eternity is simply a joke. Chapter 415 New York, Hungry Ghost Hell. On Earth, Lin Hao failed to sense the sudden appearance of the membrane outside the solar system. However, Yang Jian and the Great Sage, who had cultivated for longer and possessed a stronger sense of perception, immediately looked up into the void. "Fellow Taoist, we're trapped. A strange formation has appeared in the sky, encircling several surrounding planets." Lin Hao immediately waved his hand, opening a portal to the outer reaches of the solar system. Seeing this, Lin Hao breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Hao still held the authority of the Time Variance Administration, proving that Loki's clone within the Tree of Life at the end of time was safe. Eternity may have discovered the changes at the end of time, but Loki's clone has become crucial to the survival of the multiverse, akin to the pacemaker Marvel editors inserted into Eternity's heart. If Loki's clone were to be affected, the Tree of Life would be destroyed, the multiverse would collapse, and the multiverse of Eternity would be doomed. This was another premise that the omnipotent Eternity was forced to accept. As long as the Time Variance Administration's authority remained, Lin Hao could move freely within the multiverse. Even the blockade created by Eternal himself wouldn't be able to contain him. Lin Hao stepped through the portal, and Yang Jian and the Great Sage, curious about the methods of this world, followed suit. The three exchanged glances, then each unleashed their own methods, bombarding the membrane. After a moment, they paused, their gazes solemn. Yang Jian and the Great Sage communicated directly through their spiritual senses, teaching Lin Hao some tricks on how to use them. After Lin Hao mastered them, the three of them immediately engaged in a private group chat. It's very hard. Harder than that fucking golden monk symbols. Guanyin had retracted the 3 life-saving hairs on the Great Sage's head, depriving him of the treasures he needed to drill through the golden symbols and the yin-yang key bottle. Although this formation has no other changes, its strength alone is likely no less than that of a saint. In Journey to the West, only Erlang Shen is called Yang Erlang, and the name Yang Jian does not appear. It wasn't until the later investiture of the gods that Yang Jian appeared, where he was given the title Kingeun Maya Adeo Zhenjin. Since then, classical and modern novels and operas have begun to link Erlang Shen and Yang Jian. Today, in addition to Orthodox Erlang Shen believers, even many Taoist sects have gradually accepted the concept of Erlang Shen being called Yang Jian. Culture belongs to the people and is created by them. Obsessing over designations and neglecting the significance of cultural heritage is counterproductive. Since Black Myth, Wukong explicitly names Erlang Shen Yang Jian, it naturally implies that the concept from investiture of the gods has been adopted. Having experienced the conferred gods, Yang Jian had witnessed the methods of a saint firsthand and even entered the 9-bend Yellow River formation set up by the quasi-saint 3 sky goddesses. He was the most qualified to speak on the methods of a saint. Moreover, Yang Jian, having achieved sainthood in the flesh, possessed a body comparable to that of a saint. A formation that even he couldn't break could only be the work of a saint. That's worthy of his status, Lin Hao said, realizing it was Eternal's handiwork. To defeat a single Eternal, Lin Hao had used every possible means. First, he used his editing privileges to break the health lock that prevented him from being attacked, then used the dimension link to the Little Devil to sever his connection to the Marvel Universe, gradually wearing him down. At this point, the Multiverse Eternal only knew that Lin Hao had destroyed a single cell of his, but didn't know the specific means used, hence their fear. If he couldn't break the Multiverse Eternal's health lock, Lin Hao wouldn't be able to harm him now. But Lin Hao had time. He's only been harassing America for a little over 3 years, and he's already reached this point. If he harasses a few more of America, he'll eventually crush the multiverse and the OAA. Acting on his thought, Lin Hao and the others returned to Earth through a portal, once again raising the Infinity Gauntlet. Hey, let's return to the ruins of the Avengers headquarters outside New York. Thor and Carol have finally sealed the zombie Hulk inside a metal box. However, they don't know that in just that short time, the zombie virus has spread, along with the scattered critters, and half of the life wiped out 5 years ago has returned. Then, several giant golden red circles of light appeared above the ruins. Stephen Strange, accompanied by Peter Parker, who had previously traveled to the Eternals' home planet, and the Guardians of the Galaxy, whom he met along the way and joined in the fight against Thanos, rushed over. Wakandan soldiers, Asgardian Valkyries, Scarlet Witch Wanda, the Wasp, Hope Dine, and others all burst out from the golden red circles. They were all stunned when they saw the empty battlefield. Except for the brain-dead Peter Quill and Drax the Destroyer, who were still shouting, "Where's Thanos? I'm going to kill him." Stephen Strange immediately flew towards the few remaining Avengers, his face full of confusion. "What's going on? Where's Thanos? How did you know there was a Thanos?" Tony Stark from the main movie universe reacted the fastest, instantly remembering, "I forgot you saw the future." "Oh, so Dr. Stephen here is a magician," Tony from the base universe said in surprise. He didn't mean to be sarcastic, just teasing someone he knew. After all, he was rescued by the other Steve. "You?" Stephen asked, seeing the younger face, a sudden realization dawned on him. "You're from a parallel universe, you actually." He glanced at the two Tonys, frowning. "The multiverse is complex and dangerous. How can you touch it so freely?" "Don't worry, our level of contact won't have any impact at all." Tony from the base universe laughed slyly, like a child playing a prank. "I'm not the only one from our universe. My America is invading your America, and Pim Hank from the other universe has been eaten by his wife." Silence, a dead silence. Until Jarvis and Friday, the two AIS, projected the zombies that suddenly appeared in New York before the two Tonys. Mr. Stark, something terrible has happened. X2 Everyone watched the scene on the screen. Hungry zombies were hunting their own kind in the streets of New York City. Those who had just been brought back by Lin Hao were still dazed when, in the blink of an eye, they became zombie food. Some corpses were devoured completely, stripped of flesh and blood, leaving the zombie virus without a carrier, leaving only skeletons to feed on. Others, as long as the upper body remained, were transformed by the zombie virus into zombies, joining the ranks of predators. Even if a head remained, 2 rows of teeth could still scrape against the ground to move, and instinctively pounced on any edible flesh they found. New York had become a hell for hungry ghosts. Chapter 416 Sorry, I accidentally snapped my fingers too much? What the hell? Stephen Strange, described by the bald ancient one as the greatest sorcerer supreme, was bewildered. This isn't the future I envisioned. It means your magical skills need improvement. Tony, from the base universe, wasn't sure why Dr. Stephen had become a magician, but his sharp tongue remained undiminished. Stephen glanced deeply at Tony from the main movie universe and pressed for confirmation. Where is Thanos? Your question suggests the Thanos from another universe has already been here. One Thanos died, killed by another Thanos with the Infinity Stones, Tony replied. Wow, Stephen was once again bewildered. Could my time stone be fake? What the hell? Wanda rushed over, her eyes blazing with murderous intent, demanding, where is Thanos? The Thanos who killed Vision has been beheaded by Thor. As Jarvis's creator, Tony was essentially Vision's biological father. Seeing his daughter-in-law consumed by hatred, he hurried to explain. The Thanos from the other universes didn't kill Vision. Tony worried that an enraged Wanda would go after the remaining Thanos, but that Thanos possessed 6 Infinity Stones and the enigmatic SHIELD. His daughter-in-law was about to be given away. You're still thinking about where Thanos is? New York City has become a hell, Carol roared, tossing the Infinity Gauntlet to Tony from the main movie universe and flying towards the city. The newly returned Avengers held a deep resentment towards Thanos, their minds and eyes fixed on the majestic purple figure. Carol, however, cared more about the suffering residents of New York City. After all, she was a superhero. Moreover, so many similar events had happened in the base universe America that superheroes had conditioned reflexes, naturally reacting faster than those in the main movie universe. After this rebuke, Stephen stopped dwelling on the difference between reality and the future he had envisioned, or where Thanos had gone. They immediately began drawing circles, reopening the portal to New York City. As they did so, they asked Tony, what is this? Why are the residents like this? A highly contagious virus. Tony could only offer a preliminary analysis. Bruce has already been infected, and we haven't had time to study it yet. The portal reopened, and a very interesting scene unfolded. Naturally, the American superheroes rushed forward without hesitation, setting about stopping the zombies from preying on the residents. The Guardians of the Galaxy, however, paused. What are you doing? Rocket turned to look at Star-Lord, Destroyer, and Mantis and asked, aren't you going to rescue them? Why should we? Thanos isn't there, Star-Lord asked in surprise. And you, why are you so enthusiastic? It's not like you at all, Rocket said, stunned. After a long hesitation, he finally came up with an excuse. They've become my companions over the years. As if to maintain his aloof persona, Rocket cocked his neck and questioned Star-Lord, isn't your mother American? My mother is from Wisconsin, Star-Lord emphasized. As for my father, if he had succeeded, I might have been Earthling, because I'd already become one with Earth, all in his belly. Star-Lord, half Earthling, had no feelings for America. However, the Wakandans, known as the Lighthouse of Africa, took the initiative to cross the portal under the leadership of Black Panther. Fighting against the dead and supporting America is our duty. As if this righteous cause was a rallying cry, the Asgardian Valkyries also rushed forward, following Thor. Wanda, having lost everything, refused to move on. She had lost her lover, and now even her goal of revenge. She had lost everything, nothing left. Seeing that those willing to move on had already gone, Stephen and Wong, who had rushed to join him, exchanged a glance and both stepped through the portal. The Sorcerer Supreme also wanted to save America. The zombies in New York City were spreading rapidly, filling the previously empty streets with the sudden appearance of the second half of the population. The initial wave of zombies couldn't even feed them. Only when more and more zombies transformed did the scramble for food begin again. Be careful not to get infected, This virus is very potent. Before Tony Stark's words could be heard, the first Wakandan soldiers who rushed over had already been infected. These zombie-transformed soldiers dropped their spears and turned to pounce on their comrades, using their teeth to defend against their vibranium weapons. The tragedy of cannibalism was repeated. If every Wakandan soldier had a full-body vibranium armor, they wouldn't even be infected. Unfortunately, the Wakanda royal family wouldn't allow such an if. More and more soldiers were bitten by zombies, and the virus spread rapidly. Your Majesty, the soldiers are out of control. The captain of the Royal Guard rushed to report the situation, visible to all. Notify Shuri to immediately dispatch spacecraft and medical support to New York, Black Panther T'Challa ordered decisively. Witnessing the devastation of the zombie virus, T'Challa, as the ruler of a nation, realized that if the virus were allowed to spread, the United States, and indeed the world, would be doomed. Unfortunately, he didn't know that the virus had already flowed into the Atlantic Ocean with the waters of the Hudson River, making its global spread impossible to stop. With the exception of China, which had been protected by the Immortal Formation, the entire Earth would soon be devoid of living people, only zombies. The sudden appearance of another half of China's population also caused some chaos. Fortunately, Zhao Yu had already contacted the authorities. After the tragedy of the Hungry Ghost Hell in New York, the high-ranking officials, who had witnessed the events via satellite, finally believed Zhao Yu's words and began to mobilize the national machinery to maintain order. Across the Pacific, Lin Hao raised the Infinity Gauntlet again. For the sake of experience, I'm going to be a fool this time, he snapped his fingers again. In New York City, the Avengers were fighting off the zombies when they encountered a daunting challenge. We have to blow their heads off, otherwise we can't stop them. Are you kidding? They're just infected with a virus, not criminals. We have no right to kill them, but if we don't stop them, more innocent people will be infected. Even so, we have no right to take their lives. These superheroes weren't yet aware that becoming zombies was irreversible, so naturally, to protect their values, they argued. But the argument soon died down. Half the people arguing had vanished. Fuck. Again, Tony, from the main movie universe, cursed furiously at the scene from 5 years ago. But his voice faltered as he looked down and saw his lower body reduced to ash. Who did this, huh? Lin Hao, in the Pacific Ocean, frowned slightly. While the data displayed on the back end was substantial, it wasn't as much as he'd expected. After so many spectacular events over the years, the Great Demon had pretty much figured out how much resentment of living beings each person's death contributed. Now, with the exception of China, half of all life on Earth and throughout the universe had been wiped out, yet the harvested amount fell short of expectations. After a moment's deliberation, Lin Hao grasped the reason. I see. Sudden death is unprepared, so many people didn't have time to react with anger or fear. Then let's do it again. Immediately, Lin Hao snapped his fingers again, bringing back the people he had just wiped out. Yes, Tony in New York City added. But before he could pause, an Asian face suddenly appeared on his retina. It was the leader of the group that had stood in the clouds earlier. He wore the same Infinity Gauntlet as Thanos, inlaid with 6 Infinity Stones. Everyone, excuse me, I accidentally snapped my fingers too much. Lin Hao waved his wireless gauntlet and said with a grin, new equipment, still getting used to it. These 2 words didn't incite much anger among the beings in the universe. Instead, they clarified their earlier confusion and clarified who had brought them back. But the next sentence, to master this new equipment, I'll try it a few more times. Lin Hao paused for several seconds, and sure enough, a flood of resentment from living beings surged. Snap, another snap of the fingers, and Tony Stark from the main movie universe was once again chosen by miraculous chance. However, he became relatively calm, contributing even less soul grudge than before. That is, until he heard a familiar voice next to him. It's him. Tony from the base universe finally connected Lin Hao's demeanor and subtle expressions to the Singaporean Chinese merchant in San Francisco. Why is he here? Is he from SHIE? If he's so powerful, why would he go to America? A flash of lightning pierced a fog, and the myriad thoughts that suddenly surged into a sudden realization. Could it be that everything America has been through these past few years is the fault of this man? Tony's head, still partly extinguished, turned and saw the wry smile on his alter ego's face. So he's been targeting me for a long time. Looking up, he met the older Tony, the younger Tony's mouth twitching. Don't worry, you'll definitely come back. He won't let us off so easily. The head crumbled to ash, and the savior Tony perished once more. But he soon returned, unharmed. This time, the great Demon King had his fill. Haha, take it, Lin Hao casually threw the Infinity Gauntlet to Thanos. Although this is a good way to play, the experienced Lin Hao knows that if you play it too many times in a short period of time, no one will be angry or afraid in the end. After all, they have long been numb. Gaohua, you seem to want to make them angry or afraid. The great sage looked at Lin Hao, who was laughing happily, and asked, but after you told the truth, I saw that they have begun to be angry and afraid. Why do you want to fight them one more time? If they don't see that I can do it, how can they completely believe that I can do it? Lin Hao smiled. Gaohua, you, the great sage shook his head and said with a smile, you really deserve the name of Demon King. Odin and Thanos looked at each other, not daring to smile bitterly, so they could only hold it back. You have to be tattooed on Satan's back. Chapter 4, Fulfilling the Promise and Going to Sleep. Chapter 417. The superheroes can't hold on anymore. Beyond China, life across the world, indeed, across the entire universe, was stunned by Lin Hao's recent actions. Due to a miraculous random chance, over half of all life experienced the sensation of turning to ash. It wasn't painful, but rather a sense of panic, fearing they might be the last to escape the net when they resurrected. The resentment of living beings Lin Hao had wrestled with over the past 20 years seemed like a drop in the ocean compared to this. Upon seeing this, the little demon's large white eyes shone brightly, and drool dripped from the corners of his mouth. Play here by yourself. I won't wait for you. Lin Hao found time to return to the dimension the little demon was connected to. Pointing to the distant intersection of light and darkness, he said to the little demon, throw the things you bring back over there. Pile them up far away. Don't disturb us here. As the little demon continued to travel, the bright spot on this dimension gradually expanded. This immense energy was enough to keep the little demon busy, and the bright spot grew larger, large enough to accommodate the things it brought back. After your work is done each day, help sort the things and sort them for me. Lin Hao turned and instructed his lackey, Justin Hammer. Xiao Jiazi, transformed into a blue fire kiln, stuck out his tongue and pleaded in a fawning, pug-like manner, Master, don't worry. Xiao Jiazi will do this. During the previous battle against the Single Eternal, most of the Fire Kiln Farm's capitalists were killed or injured. Later, Lin Hao, preoccupied with other matters, neglected to replenish the farm, leaving the remaining farms with an increased workload. They were all limp from blood loss. However, the artificial Fire Kiln fruit inherently enhanced their physical strength, allowing them, even in their worst condition, to possess more strength than a normal adult man. It was just a matter of moving goods and sprinkling water. After making some arrangements, Lin Hao left this dimension and returned to the main Marvel Cinematic Universe. The situation in New York City had taken a new turn. A zombie virus had completely broken out. Despite the Avengers' desperate efforts to stop it, their inability to decisively kill them led to a growing number of infections. Frankly, Lin Hao's 2 attempts to wipe out half of the life force were more effective in halting the virus's spread than those hesitant superheroes. Damn it, we can't hold it. Flying high in the sky, Carol watched as the city's streets were overrun by zombies, with only a handful of the living lucky enough to escape. New York's population, over 8 million, had been wiped out by Thanos 5 years earlier. Suddenly brought back by Lin Hao, they were all in a state of disorientation. Some even found strangers living in their homes, wives or husbands embracing other men or women. Arguments and shouting were inevitable. Many were already on the streets, and even those inside rushed out to investigate, only to encounter the gaping maws of zombies as soon as they stepped outside. Outside the city, the situation was no longer peaceful either. Countless animals, surviving the carnage, were scavenging for food. By this time, the Avengers, all capable of flight, were already suspended in the air, as the ground had collapsed and was swarming with zombies scrambling for food. Mr. Stark, a missile is coming from the northwest. Jarvis and Friday reported to their respective masters almost simultaneously. The nuclear bomb arrived late, but it arrived nonetheless. Although the White House and the Pentagon were briefly thrown into disarray by the sudden return of half their senior management, the decision-makers, after gaining a clear understanding of the situation in New York, immediately made a decision. This time, both Tony Starks hesitated. Carol, floating beside them, also hesitated. Contact the White House and the Pentagon and tell them to wait. Our allies are still fighting, with Captain America drained of his serum, Tony from the main movie universe temporarily assumed command of the Avengers. He then looked at Carol. Since the decision had been made, Carol didn't bother to dwell on it. She turned and flew towards the missile, lifting it into space. After dealing with the missile, Tony, gazing down at the irreversible situation below, sent a message to all his allies: retreat to the outskirts of the city and cooperate with the military to establish a blockade. They were merely superheroes, not the military. They had no authority to blockade New York City, nor did they have the ability to do so. Unfortunately, Tony seemed to have forgotten that another armed force existed within New York City, the American elite from the base universe. These heavily armed private armies, controlled by the powerful, had already seized Manhattan while the Avengers were battling Thanos' forces in Shenren in the suburbs, securing the portal outside Stark Tower. Due to the ongoing fighting outside New York's west side, this force had been forced to head north to Poughkeepsie. The New York elites of the base universe intended to seize a vast swath of upstate New York, then see how the American authorities in that universe reacted. If they were vulnerable, they would seize more territory. If they were more assertive, they would resort to forceful tactics. However, just as they had established their positions, a zombie swarm erupted in New York City. Shit. These monsters look like zombies. These soldiers acted with even greater decisiveness than the superheroes. Having experienced countless battles in the chaotic base universe and having fired on their own citizens before, they naturally felt no pressure. They managed to hold Manhattan's defenses for a while. Currently, the lives infected by the zombie virus are mostly ordinary humans and animals. The zombie Hulk is locked in an alloy box, and the zombie Wasp, without her wasp suit, has only the advantage of being barely noticeable. Her strength and speed are no match for a normal adult male. Therefore, the military is not a problem. If the superheroes are decisive, they can temporarily suppress the situation in New York City. Seeing that the zombies are easy to deal with, the commander from the base universe didn't consider temporarily retreating to the portal, but instead insisted on their original strategy of advancing northward. Retreating would only mean staying in the blockade, with food and water becoming increasingly scarce, and we'd also face massacres by the rednecks. We have no choice but to find a new home in America. Our superiors have said that if we capture upstate New York, all soldiers will be awarded varying amounts of land based on their military merit. Everyone can become a farmer, while American soldiers' attachment to the land may not be as strong as that of East Asians. In this current climate, having a foothold is truly important for themselves and their families, leading to their incredible morale. Seeing his pie-in-the-sky strategy working, the commander smiled with satisfaction. While the promise of war would be fulfilled after it ended, would it be over for a long time to come? In the chaotic New York, distinct factions began to emerge: the vast zombie horde, the retreating Avengers, the alien invaders advancing towards upstate New York, and the National Guard, finally reacting and being driven in by their superiors. All were intertwined in this hell of hungry ghosts. Chapter 418: Realistic Zombie Movie. After experiencing two parody destructions, half of Earth's population, brought back by Lin Hao, finally came to terms with their survival. However, before they could deal with a host of other issues, their wives remarrying, their husbands remarrying, their daughters being attacked by yellow-haired monsters, their sons also being attacked by yellow-haired monsters, they were forced to face another global crisis. In this age of advanced information technology, major events anywhere are instantly reported around the world, let alone in a cosmopolitan city like New York. Not to mention the fearless influencers and bloggers. Reporters from major media outlets rush to the scene of the news, completely ignoring the implications of the zombies. What the hell are these monsters? Oh my god, they're eating people. They're biting off human flesh. Look, the people who've been bitten have become monsters too. It's contagious. God bless America. This is going to be a disaster. While the destruction incident 5 years ago opened Earth's eyes to the vast threats emanating from space, it failed to bridge the divide between them. National and ethnic conflicts persist. The half of the population that had just returned had no memory of the previous 5 years, like an app, still retaining the love, hate, and hatred of 5 years ago. Many gloated over the American disaster, but some were quick to react and realize the danger of the zombies. They're spreading. Is this a virus? Authorities from various countries began contacting the White House incessantly, seeking information on the zombie virus. However, the White House was already overwhelmed by the sudden return of half the population and the American invaders from all over the world. Only a dozen staff members in the Foreign Affairs Office were left scrambling to answer calls from international dignitaries, but what could they possibly know? Seeing this, the countries were forced to mobilize their intelligence forces in the United States to gather this information. With the exception of one country, which remained indifferent, it ordered all its overseas missions to immediately evacuate the United States and initiated a global evacuation plan. Zhao Yi, using a spacecraft and over 300 SMA agents, had already conducted a calm dialogue with the authorities. Although the other half of the government staff reappeared later, the officialdom is a peculiar system of responsibilities, and the previous positions had already been occupied. Immediate restoration of power was impossible. It would require negotiations and compromises from multiple parties. Seizing this opportunity, Zhao Yi helped the incumbents successfully implement the emergency plan. Once a state of emergency was declared, negotiations on the division of power would inevitably be delayed. Otherwise, the higher-ranking officials would be accused of ignoring the overall situation, and the more they would be forced to step down. This secretly delighted the incumbents. More time to prepare would give them more leverage in future negotiations. Thus, the state of emergency was successfully declared, and the entire state machinery was forced to operate efficiently. To support Zhao Yi, Lin Hao hovered over the Bohe Sea, deliberately creating a thick cloud cover, fearing that some inattentive individuals would deliberately overlook it. Several rows of cloud-made tables and chairs were set up in front of a screen composed of mist. Lin Hao led the group, accompanied by Yang Jian and the Monkey King. They ate sunflower seeds and drank tea, enjoying a real-life zombie movie together. Tisk tisk, this plasma film is so American. Beside him, Yang Jian was toying with a zombie rat, using his magical power to create a spherical barrier to trap it in his palm. The celestial eye on his forehead shone with a golden light, illuminating the rat's flesh and bones, revealing hideous viral cells coursing through its veins. Could you please stop fiddling with these disgusting things while someone's eating? Lin Hao rolled his eyes at him. Even a scientist like me thinks you're perverted. Yang Jian ignored him, marveling at the virus in the rat's blood. Not only is this virus extremely active, it even has the ability to strengthen the body. Even I feel a slight tingling sensation. Upon hearing this, Lin Hao and the great sage both moved their stools a few steps away and cast contemptuous glances at him. HMPH, a summer insect can't talk about ice. Yang Jian snorted coldly, saying disdainfully, do you know how difficult it is to improve my physical cultivation to the point where I've reached this point? Since this virus contains an opportunity that could allow even a saint's physical body to advance a step forward, why not take it? Lin Hao's eyes lit up upon hearing this. If Yang Jian could truly discard the dross and extract the essence, creating a body-refining elixir, wouldn't that be a huge win? Does the true Lord know how to refine elixirs? Yes, but I'm not proficient, Yang Jian said calmly. You can give it a try. Lin Hao first opened a portal to the base universe. After returning to base camp and out of Eternal Sight, he instructed the little demons constantly traveling through worlds to open the light gate. True Lord, Great Sage, please. Yang Jian and the Great Sage exchanged a tacit glance and laughed. Fellow Taoist Lin's methods are truly extraordinary. Lin Hao simply smiled, then used the power of the demonic contract to imprint his voice directly into the minds of Odin, Nguyen, and the others. Keep an eye on it, and notify me if anything happens. Lin Hao wasn't the only one conducting research on the virus. The Avengers were also currently doing so. A temporary structure constructed entirely of metal hulls had emerged from the ruins of the Avengers headquarters outside New York City. Steve Rogers, having lost his super soldier serum, Barton, whose internal organs were shattered and he needed medical equipment to survive, Rhodes, contaminated by the power of the Beholder, and the now zombified Hulk, all within this makeshift structure. The other Avengers felt a pang of sympathy at the fate of their former companions. In the main film universe, Tony Stark and Rocket Raccoon were conducting separate studies on blood extracted from other zombies and the zombie Hulk. Unable to assist, the militants remained on the outskirts of the city, assisting the military in building a defense. Unfortunately, the road from Manhattan to upstate New York has been occupied by American invaders. The federal government in the film's main universe faces a difficult situation, having to both defend against the zombies and fight the invaders. With the federal army at their head, the sympathetic superheroes choose to ignore the soldiers' massacre of the sick residents. Relieved that they don't have to choose their side. Since the zombies haven't yet emerged as powerful individuals, the soldiers have little trouble suppressing them. However, the zombie population in the city is surging, while the living are either being devoured or transformed into zombies to join the cannibalism. It's obvious that the White House will bomb New York again soon. Tony Stark feels a sense of obligation to quickly understand the structure of the zombie virus and create an antidote to prevent the millions of people in the city from being wiped out by mushroom bombs. Tony from the base universe doesn't share this sense of mission. He's witnessed mushroom bombs detonating on home turf many times. Washington has been planted with mushroom bombs, and even the bigwigs in the White House are all dead. Why would they still care about these small scenes? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419 Tony finally feels powerless. Tony Stark and Rocket Raccoon's research was doomed to failure. Despite their diverse origins, the zombie virus in the Marvel zombie universe shared a common trait: it could not be cured by existing technology. This wasn't limited to Earth's technology, but the entire universe, including advanced civilizations like the Beyonders, Nullifiers, and Observers. Technology, magic, and divine power proved powerless against this stubborn virus, forcing them to watch as it infect the entire universe. Even the most brilliant minds in the universe, including Tony Stark, Thanos, Mr. Fantastic Reed, and the Supreme Evolutionary, were unable to create an antidote. Even magicians like Stephen Strange, Baron Mordo, and Queen Frigga were unable to use magic to remove the poison. This was a flaw in the setting. From the original Earth 2149 universe to the later zombie invasions of the main universe and Omniverse, countless brilliant minds and powerful individuals tried their best, but to no avail. Ultimately, they resorted to creating a time loop to confine the virus to a limited number of universes, preventing it from spreading to the multiverse. No, they're too tenacious. Rocket Raccoon's scalp tingled as he gazed at the viral cells multiplying and dividing under the microscope. Damn it, neither superheat nor supercooling will work, not even gamma rays. We're in big trouble. The virus won't kill them, which means not only can those infected be incurable, but the virus in their remains isn't dead either. The only good news is that this virus requires living flesh to survive. Parasitic within it, it's over. Tony Stark, having discovered the truth, slumped in his chair, dejected. New York is finished. If you don't tell the White House quickly and have the military completely blockade New York State, all of America will be finished. Tony, from the base universe, was accustomed to such grand occasions. Seeing his other self so clueless, he felt a wave of disdain. As expected, I am the strongest Tony Stark in the multiverse. But, Tony from the main movie universe still hesitated. No buts, Tony from the base universe said sternly, we're not politicians. It's not our job to make the decision. We're only responsible for informing them of the results. Alright, the thought of not having to make the decision himself made Tony from the main universe feel relieved. He quickly sent his analysis report to his acquaintances in the White House. Seeing that it was Tony Stark's research, the people in the White House took it very seriously. The Secretary of State, after reading the report, was in disbelief and unwilling to believe it. He handed it to the man behind the resolute desk, thankful that he didn't have to make the decision himself. After reading the report, the president scowled and turned to his scientific advisor, who had just arrived from the laboratory. What are your conclusions? The atmosphere among American politicians was far more heated than that of the country across the ocean. Arguments were commonplace in the halls of Congress, sometimes even leading to outright violence. Previously, when Lin Hao hadn't brought back half of the group, the newly formed ruling group quickly reached a consensus and launched the nuclear missile. Now that the other half of the politicians had returned, they were finding ways to cause trouble for the ruling group in an effort to regain power. Not only did the returning politicians want to seize power, but so did the newly returned conglomerates. Not only did they want to seize power, but they also wanted to reclaim their divided wealth. These individuals hit it off immediately, coordinating efforts from all sides to attack the ruling elite. Dropping nuclear bombs on one's own territory, how could such a prime excuse for criticism be unused? With these individuals hindering them, the U.S. authorities' nuclear deployment was even less effective than before. A similar phenomenon could have occurred in the country across the ocean, but the overwhelming arrival of the SWA agency forced everyone into a state of emergency, temporarily alleviating the chaos. Hearing the president's question, the elderly scientist in the white coat shook his head helplessly. Our conclusions are similar. These viruses are simply unerasable. Notify the public. The military will construct a permanent perimeter along the New York state border, and the National Guard will assist in evacuating the population of New York. This president was quite assertive. After all, he was the iron-fisted president who had been appointed in a time of crisis 5 years ago and subsequently successfully re-elected. Having experienced this before, he was a seasoned veteran. Even if nuclear bombs were to be dropped later, the surface work had to be done now, otherwise the newly returned opposition would undoubtedly launch a presidential impeachment. While humans on land were busy scheming against each other, a school of zombie fish entering the Atlantic from the Hudson River encountered a large predator. The shark opened its maw and devoured several bleeding zombie fish. Soon, its eyes rolled back and it evolved into a zombie shark. Driven by its enhanced physique and hunger, the zombie shark devoured the fish at a rapid pace, devouring most of them. The few that escaped were soon joined in the hunt. Most terrifyingly, the zombie virus, along with the blood from the wounds, had already entered the seawater, infecting microorganisms and plankton. From the nearshore to the deep sea, the zombie virus spread across the western Atlantic in just a few hours, then spread on ocean currents to South America, Western Europe, and Western Africa. 20 hours later, when a zombie whale collided with a ship sailing on the eastern Atlantic, people were horrified to discover that the zombie virus had spread from America. While the spectators from other countries finally sensed the panic, the higher-ups had noticed it earlier. Some had spotted the zombie animals appearing in cities around New York, while others had seen clues in the Eastern powers' hasty evacuation efforts. Damn it! Why are they reacting so quickly? What's the point of evacuating? If the virus spreads, the whole world will be doomed. Regardless of other countries' skepticism, the Eastern powers continued their evacuation with swift efficiency. Once the order was passed, it was strictly followed, with no regard for those who hesitated or deliberately delayed. Those who could catch the flight were rescued and brought home, those who refused to come or who lingered in the free world were left to fend for themselves. Less than a day after the Wasp appeared outside New York and devoured Pim Hank right in front of the Avengers realized with dismay that they couldn't even lock down New York. The virus has spread to New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. Tony Stark, from the main film universe, finally realized the powerlessness of his alter ego. That's not the only problem. Bruce is growing increasingly violent, his powers increasing. I've already added 3 more barriers to block him, and he's already hammering the original box to pieces. Rocket Raccoon frowned deeply. I'm sorry, I can't calm him down, Mantis said apologetically. Chapter 420, The Eunuch from the Western Factory has evolved into a zombie eunuch. The real chaos began with an infected eunuch from the Lone Star Republic, originally bound for Rama's body, but unexpectedly bitten by a zombie mosquito. The eunuchs dispatched by Captain True originated from southern cities like Houston, New Orleans, and Austin, and appeared in their respective cities after passing through portals. The zombie uprising in New York was still far away, but advances in transportation not only allowed humans to travel quickly, but also allowed small animals to sneak onto human vehicles and reach areas their fleeting lives would otherwise have been unable to reach. Think rats on trains, cockroaches in trucks, and flies and mosquitoes on airplanes. In the days following the Wasp's appearance, many miraculous events unfolded. For example, a plane successfully landed, and upon opening the cockpit door, the pilot was met by a stewardess. No sweet kiss, only a stinking, bloody mouth. This was the work of a zombie mosquito, which had devoured or transformed all the passengers. The closed cockpit door and the roar of the engines drowned out the screams within. Another example, a driverless train hurtles toward a platform, its carriages collapsing and tumbling, a swarm of zombies bursting out. Or a ship, powerless and stranded, drifts in the ocean. The survivors, holed up in a cramped area, repeatedly plead for help on their satellite phones, but to no avail, as no one can rescue them. New Orleans may seem far from New York, but through a strange twist of chance, infected mosquitoes have found a way to escape. They spread from the airport and quickly spread across the city and into the wilderness. A man searching desperately for Rama's remains is bitten by a zombie mosquito and evolves into a zombie-like man. However, his evolution isn't accompanied by uplifting music, but rather by mournful screams. Arthur, what's wrong with you? Arthur, the team members around him are all veteran men who have been training for over 2.5 years, their speed and reflexes far surpassing those of ordinary men. They immediately distanced themselves from the enemy. "Don't go near him. He looks like he's infected with that virus from the news. What the hell? This is a wasteland, not even a rabbit to be seen." How did the infected come from? The leader, the eunuch, swiftly drew his sword and dismembered the flying culprit. It was clearly just a mosquito, but even after being split in two, it remained alive. Its wings flapped rapidly, and a ball of foul-smelling blood burst from its fragile skin. The blood, falling to the sand, seemed to have life, trying to wriggle. At that moment, the zombie eunuch completed its transformation. Driven by hunger, it pounced on the nearest teammate, who, half dead, glanced down at the dismembered mosquito. "Quinn, be careful." The zombie virus had boosted eunuch Arthur's physical strength, giving him the upper hand given their comparable power. However, eunuch Quinn was a step behind, and was grabbed by his left arm. Its large, stinking mouth bit down, easily tearing off a chunk of flesh from eunuch Quinn's arm. The leader, the eunuch, then made a foolish move. Instead of amputating Quinn's injured arm, he sent Arthur flying with a powerful kick. Quinn, he had clearly underestimated the virus's ability to spread through the bloodstream. Instead of waking him up, eunuch Quinn turned and delivered a vicious blow. From then on, all three eunuchs were infected. In the days since the virus appeared, only ordinary people and animals had been affected, with the exception of the Hulk and the Wasp. Now, three extraordinary zombies have finally appeared, and their combat power far surpasses that of ordinary superheroes. Of the three, eunuch Quinn miraculously retained his sanity, remaining a fully functioning zombie, save for his inability to resist hunger. Watching Captain and Arthur sprint across the wasteland, each focused on their own prey, Quinn didn't pursue them. Instead, he turned and headed towards downtown New Orleans, determined to relay the news back to the Lone Star Republic. Unlike the rest of the United States, the southern and southwestern states remained free of American invaders from another dimension. This was because the southern United States had been occupied by the Lone Star Republic. Captain Zheng was preoccupied with reforms in construction, so he had no time to invade the American mainland. Therefore, while the portals in the southern cities had not been occupied by the invaders, the Lone Star Republic's new army was still stationed on the other side. Upon realizing this, the American authorities in the main universe quickly mobilized their troops to defend the city. However, they only held out for a little over 2 days as the sudden appearance of zombies in the city disrupted social order, leading to the complete collapse of the military and police forces. New Orleans had become a zombie prey paradise. The few remaining people fled in panic as the swarms of zombies pursued them. The roars of the zombies and the screams of the living being torn apart filled the city. Eunuch Quinn, fighting back his hunger, rushed against the flow of time towards the portal in the city center. Ever since the zombie virus broke out in the main universe, panicked zombies have inevitably rushed towards the portals. However, nearly all portals were previously occupied by American elites intent on invading the main universe. Since the zombies transformed from ordinary people are relatively ineffective, they have managed to hold their ground until now. However, upon discovering the zombie outbreak in the alternate America, the American elites of the base universe halted their invasion plans. They needed a new homeland, not a dangerous place overrun by zombies. However, the Lone Star Republic to the south was in full swing, and the northern expedition was accelerating, leaving these lingering American elites in a dilemma. Between zombies on one side and the gallows on the other, what a difficult choice. Upon discovering the Marvel editors had initiated the zombie plan, Lin Hao immediately returned to the base universe to reinforce the light barrier blocking America, ensuring the virus would not spread. Since Eternity has completely sealed off the solar system of the film's main universe, Lin Hao plans to connect all future Americas, centered around the main universe's solar system, to unleash a multiverse of chaos. China in the main universe is protected by a vast immortal formation. Even if Earth were destroyed, China's territory would remain floating in the universe, forming a unique star system similar to Asgard. Eunuch Quinn rushed to the portal, and upon seeing him, the opposing new army soldiers immediately raised their machine guns. Eunuch Quinn slowly stepped through the portal, struggling to suppress his hunger. Raising his hands, he hoarsely said, "Stay away. I'm infected. Go inform the captain. All my men are infected." With that, he suppressed his cannibalistic urges with incredible fortitude and retreated back to the main universe behind the portal. News quickly spread that the real captain, en route to the northern expedition, had returned to New Orleans using a portkey. Chapter 421 The Old Woman of Zhejiang Town. Standing before the portal in downtown New Orleans, Steve Rogers gazed at Quinn, who, hunched over on the other side of the transparent portal, held his head in his hands, desperately trying to suppress his hunger. He stepped forward without hesitation. "Captain," the new troops within the XN defense position shouted. "Don't worry, I won't go far." Steve waved his hand and stepped through the portal. "Captain, don't come near me." Quinn, seeing his captain approaching, retreated rapidly. "Quinn, believe in yourself," Steve encouraged. "Since you can maintain your composure, I believe you can defeat the virus." With the portal constantly open, it was inevitable that panicked zombies would infiltrate America in the base universe. Cities occupied by the Lone Star Republic had already seen numerous zombie invasions. These common zombies were not difficult to deal with. After capturing and studying specimens, the new troops had learned a great deal about the zombie virus. This was also the reason why Steve had recently accelerated his northern expedition. He wanted to quickly take over the entire United States to prevent the powerful from being unable to defend the portals, allowing even more zombies to enter. If the zombie virus also spreads back home in America, what's the point of liberating the entire country? The virus is too strong. Quinn endured the pain, his scalp scratched by his nails, and uncontrollable low roars erupted from his throat. "Give me the communicator. This universe has become dangerous. We can't risk any more." Steve wouldn't let his team stay in this dangerous universe just for an unknown martial art. Quinn reluctantly pulled the communicator from his pocket and threw it over. It was a communicator specially developed for the teams of Unix by the technical department before they entered the main universe of the movie. It was essentially a modified military cell phone that used the same satellite channels in the main universe for encrypted communication, similar to satellite phones. The Lone Star Republic first occupied Houston, naturally controlling the Johnson Space Center and gaining control of many satellites. Since the two universes were the same, using the source code to secretly open several communication channels would be easy. After all, even if they were discovered, they would only be attributed to their own secret service. "Everyone, listen. Quickly reach the nearest portal and return." Steve opened the communicator and ordered the Unix. Someone quickly replied. "Captain, okay, we're heading back." "Captain, I've got some news. I've spotted Johnny Tyson. It seems he's found Rama's body." "What?" Steve demanded immediately. "Where are you now?" "New Jersey, a place called Westview," the team member on the other end of the communicator replied. Steve pondered for a moment, then ordered, "Everyone else, return. Team Hales, wait for now. I'll be right there." He also reminded them, "You must be extremely careful. Not just about the infected, but also about mosquitoes and animals." After giving the order, Steve looked at Quinn and said sternly, "Quinn, you too, return. We'll build you an isolation room. Trust me, we'll find a way to cure you of the virus." Quinn was tempted, but a deep hunger in his heart forced him to recognize the situation. He quickly stepped back, shaking his head at Steve in agony. "No, I can't put my companions in danger." "Quinn," Steve shouted at the retreating Quinn. Seeing Quinn's resolute attitude, he gave up and, with a cold expression, stepped back through the portal. As the leader of the Lone Star Republic, Steve could no longer act with the impulsiveness he had during his time as Captain America. He recognized the responsibility he shouldered. The universe beyond the portal had been ravaged by zombies, with transportation cut off. To reach New Jersey quickly from New Orleans, Steve preferred to travel through his own territory, where he could at least mobilize the full power of the government. He could take a temporary risk for the enormous benefits, but it couldn't be prolonged, and he had to have a thorough plan in place. Originally, Steve shouldn't have set out without definitive information, but he had faith in Johnny Tyson, his swordsman. As the most senior father-in-law, he had passed on the news, and since Tyson had spread the word, it was highly likely that Rama's remains had indeed been discovered. So, he decided to make the trip. Westview is located in northwestern New Jersey, not far from New York. After returning to Earth, Wanda didn't join the other Avengers in stopping the zombie infestation in downtown New York City because her world had already collapsed. Her memories were still stuck on the moment of Vision's death 5 years prior. To prevent Thanos from obtaining the Mind Stone, Wanda, at Vision's request, killed her lover herself. However, to no avail, Thanos used the Time Stone to restore Vision and then killed him again before her eyes. Already burdened with guilt and pain, she realized her lover's sacrifice and her own awakening were of no use, becoming a mockery. This pain afflicted the ever-fragile Wanda. Wanda's fate was already difficult. Her parents were killed by a bomb as a child, leaving her orphaned and subject to human experimentation by Hydra, where she suffered a long period of neglect. Wanda was sensitive, suspicious, and yearning for love. After being taken away by the Avengers, Tony Stark, fearing her young age would struggle to control her powers, imprisoned her. This, in turn, gave Vision, the sixth child, the opportunity to enter Wanda's heart. Though a robot, Vision possessed vast experience, the patience and tolerance of an elder, perfectly fulfilling Wanda's inner longing. This was the reason they ultimately came together. It sounds like a goldfish guy kidnapping a young girl, but considering Vision was barely 3 years old when Wanda, already in her 20s, pushed over, it's truly absurd. With Vision's death, Wanda's world collapsed. Revenge against Thanos was a goal for survival, but the Thanos who killed Vision had been killed by Thor 5 years earlier, and she couldn't find another Thanos. Wanda had no choice but to return to the land she and Vision had previously purchased. This land was located in Westview, New Jersey. They had originally planned to build a home together, but Thanos' invasion shattered everything. After the zombie outbreak, the virus took time to develop, eventually reaching New Jersey, near New York. Westview remained peaceful, however, because the town had been enveloped by a magical barrier. Unable to find her purpose in life, Wanda finally used magic to create an illusory world, a world with Vision. Suddenly, two figures appeared from outside the barrier. "Brother Lin, isn't having me enough for you?" 18-year-old Wanda looked at Lin Hao beside her angrily. The sour smell emanating from her body could be spread 10 miles away. "That old woman is already over 30 years old. I took advantage of the tail end of the holiday to go around the area these 2 days, so I was a little less." Chapter 422, The Fathers-in-Laws Entrenched Outside Zhejiang Town. "What are you thinking about?" Lin Hao slapped her head and emphasized, "I'm here to find you an opportunity, okay, Tisk." Wanda rolled her eyes. "I don't care about these side effects of magic, one can learn from others. Chaos magic involves the power of creation and the way of good fortune, so it's still worth learning from." Lin Hao and Wanda silently broke into the magical barrier covering Westview Town. The several waves of eunuchs who remained outside were completely unaware of them. Under Dongfang Bubei's guidance, Johnny Tyson arrived in Westview Town. Sadako had already hidden the remains of Rama, which Lin Hao had concocted, there. When Wanda arrived, the magical barrier surrounded the town. This frustrates the eunuchs who had planned to wait and see. "Jester, it's all your fault." A white eunuch with black hair and brown eyes glared angrily at his companions. "If you hadn't told us to wait, we would have already gone in. Humph, if I hadn't discovered Johnny Tyson's whereabouts, would you have found this place?" The hook-nosed eunuch named Jester sneered disdainfully. Johnny Tyson was chosen not only because he was the first man Ajahn had cut off and had successfully completed the task many times, but also because he was currently weaker than Adam Smith. If the order was sent to Eunuch Shi, with his current strength, he would never be caught by the other eunuchs. How could more eunuchs be attracted then? After reaching a bottleneck in the exorcism sword technique, the eunuchs could no longer make any progress. Their skills were essentially the same, and the difference in combat effectiveness was reflected in talent and diligence. Despite Eunuch Tai's seniority, his skills were almost the same as the other eunuchs, and he was even weaker than some of the more talented newcomers, such as his apprentice Steve Rogers. Speak of the devil, and the devil appears. Coming from a portal in a nearby city, Steve Rogers, single-handedly using a pair of magical wings, quickly arrived in Westview and reunited with the team he had sent earlier. "Cliff, how's the situation?" Steve immediately asked the team members who had arrived earlier upon landing. "We just arrived too, less than 6 hours ago. They say a barrier suddenly appeared here 3 days ago. We suspect it's a magical barrier. Johnny Tyson went in 3 days ago and hasn't emerged. If they had already emerged, there wouldn't be so many eunuchs gathered outside the barrier, and the atmosphere wouldn't be so harmonious. It's important to note that the surrounding area isn't peaceful. Westview, adjacent to New York State, has long seen signs of zombie activity, both human and animal. Living people in nearby towns have fled. Faced with a frenzied predation of zombies and zombie beasts, how could ordinary people dare to remain in the wild? It was these skilled and daring eunuchs who relied on force to resist the zombies. The eunuchs also maintained communication channels, and as word spread, more and more eunuchs gathered outside Westview. Their primary reason for crossing the portal was to search for Rama's remains, return to male form, and obtain a higher level technique. Now that they had confirmed the news, they naturally did everything they could to get here. People tend to follow the crowd, and as more people gathered, their belief in the news grew. Steve had been studying the magical barrier for hours. The radiant, colorful light of the barrier was particularly eerie in the night. This light would attract zombies from the surrounding wilderness, forcing the remaining eunuchs to fight them. Fortunately, the eunuchs, each in their small groups, remained vigilant in their fight for Rama's remains. Small groups were wary of other groups, and even small groups were wary of each other. All the eunuchs meditated instead of sleeping, maintaining a certain level of vigilance even when they closed their eyes. The insane zombies roared before they even got close, making sneak attacks impossible. Instead, smaller insects were more likely to be preyed upon. Over the past 3 days, several eunuchs had been smitten and transformed into zombie eunuchs, but none had retained their sanity. Everyone had come for the chance, so naturally, they showed no mercy to the zombie eunuchs. Once they spotted someone struck, the surrounding eunuchs would swiftly attack, first severing their necks, then slicing or dicing their heads with their blades. Their coordination grew increasingly seamless. However, as more eunuchs were struck, their patience wore thin. With no opportunity in sight and the increasing danger, everyone grew impatient. Consequently, the eunuchs began attacking the magical barrier more frequently. Previously, each eunuch might only test it once a day, some even waiting to see what would happen after their initial attempts. Now, unable to wait, they drew their swords and stormed the barrier. However, this barrier was created by chaos magic, and despite the eunuchs' combat prowess, which ranked among the best among Earth's superheroes, they were no match for it. In other words, they relied solely on brute force, lacking a true method for breaking it, resulting in ineffective results. Wanda had long anticipated the enchanted ward would be attacked. After all, such a large luminous object on the ground could be seen by astronauts far away in space, let alone those nearby. However, Wanda, absorbed in her dream, paid no attention to the outside world. She didn't care whether there were humans or zombies outside the ward. She simply wanted to live a peaceful life with her creation, even using magic to create twin sons to play house with. Lin Hao and Wanda, who had already entered Westview, sat across from Wanda's house, openly observing the chaos magic at work. Only 3 people in Westview remained conscious: Lin Hao, the 18-year-old Wanda, and the centuries-old witch Agatha. Even Wanda, the creator of the illusion, was lost in the dream and unwilling to awaken. Johnny Tyson, who had arrived earlier, fell into the illusion like the rest of Westview. The exorcism sword technique only enhances physical strength, not magic resistance. Against high-level chaos magic, Eunuch Tyson was completely defenseless. Brother Lin, the 18-year-old Wanda, who was sitting on the right side of Lin Hao, suddenly hugged his arm tightly. Looking at the elderly Wanda across the street, she suddenly felt sad. Why do I feel that she is so pitiful? When a rabbit dies, the fox mourns, and all creatures mourn for their own kind. Seeing another of herself immersed in a dream alone, Wanda realized her despair. If I hadn't met Brother Lin, would I be like her now? Wanda murmured, hugging Lin Hao's arm tightly, not daring to let go, for fear that she would also lose the only light in her life. Lin Hao finally pulled his arm free, hugged Wanda in his arms, and smiled and comforted. Don't be afraid, your life is different now. Besides, no one can take me away. Yeah, Wanda nodded heavily. She lay in Lin Hao's arms, feeling the warmth, looking at the lonely lamp across the street. Still writing, everyone can read it during the day. Chapter 423 Captain America easily defeats Scarlet Witch. In the Marvel Universe, chaos magic is a form of magic unique to Scarlet Wanda. In the comics, it originates from the god of the underworld, Sisyphus, an ancient contemporary of the serpent god Set, who was later banished to another dimension by the sun god, created by the creator and Gaia. Sisyphus originally envisioned Wanda's physique and intended to cultivate her as a vessel for resurrection and return to Earth. However, Wanda severed her connection to him and completely mastered the power, creating a unique brand of chaos magic in the Marvel Universe. This magic possesses a powerful ability to permanently rewrite reality. In the setting, it resembles the Reality Stone, a humanoid version of it. This power is typically unleashed only when Wanda goes berserk. The most famous instance of this is in the comic House of M, where a devastated Wanda utters the understated phrase "no more mutants," effectively erasing the superpowers of nearly all mutants in the universe. Her words are truly powerful. Interestingly, in the Marvel zombie universe, the zombie Sentinels killed Wanda in their first battle upon arriving in Earth 2149, so no one knows whether chaos magic can modify the zombie virus. From a personal perspective, chaos magic's ability to modify the zombie virus is unlikely to surpass that of the Reality Stone. However, superheroes excel at explosion. To satisfy readers, the setting is like a stinky sock, toss it out when it's time. Lin Hao is intrigued by this, as he seeks to deepen his understanding of the zombie virus. After Yang Jian suggested that the zombie virus could even benefit his physical cultivation, Lin Hao has conducted extensive research over the past few days, using the power of time to continuously catalyze the virus in various environments. He has accumulated a wealth of data and achieved some results. However, these results are too crude for Lin Hao to directly apply on himself, so he plans to recruit some human test subjects for clinical trials. While Bulma and Vegapunk continue their research on the virus, Lin Hao has chosen Westview as the location to release Rama's remains. Firstly, he wanted to see if Wanda's chaos magic could rewrite the zombie virus, thereby obtaining new data. Secondly, he was somewhat interested in Agatha's Darkseid book. Thirdly, he wanted to give the eunuchs a collective chance. After all, in the future multiverse war, these eunuchs would be excellent cannon fodder and needed reinforcement. It truly killed 3 birds with 1 stone. Lin Hao's 2 targets were across the street. Agatha, a witch who had lived for centuries, lived next door to Wanda and had become her good friend. This old scoundrel Agatha possessed profound magical prowess. Although she appeared only after discovering Wanda's magical barrier, she was able to seamlessly blend into Wanda's illusion and even created a legitimate identity, completely unaware of her actions. In this illusion, Agatha, like a detached higher dimensional being, quietly observed Wanda's antics. Until the peace was broken by a man. After a long day of research, Steve Rogers finally penetrated a magical barrier and magically broke into the sealed-off town of Westview. As Captain America, who can learn anything except flirting, Steve's comprehension is not lacking. After years of studying magic under Ferga, he has become equally skilled. Agatha could slip silently into Wanda's barrier, so Steve could certainly do the same with a bang. The moment Steve vanished, the surrounding eunuchs rushed to where he had been standing. Team member Cliff had already left with 2 other eunuchs, heading deep into the wilderness to meet the captain. How did he get in? How do you know he got in, idiot? Don't you know him? He's Steve Rogers, our Captain America. Captain America, so what? He dares to steal our things, we'll kill him anyway. The exasperated eunuchs launched another fierce attack on the magical barrier, but mere physical attacks were powerless to break it unless they exceeded the barrier's defense threshold. Steve ignored the noises outside the barrier. Entering it, he was shocked to find himself in a new uniform, a familiar, star-spangled uniform. He also held a vibranium shield. Reaching out to knock on it, Steve discovered it was truly made of vibranium. What magical magic, Captain Rogers? Wanda suddenly appeared before Steve, scrutinizing him closely. Her eyes fixed on him, and she immediately raised her hands, a crimson glow swirling in her palms. You're not Steve Rogers. To be more precise, I'm not the one you're familiar with. Steve smiled and said calmly, I came in looking for someone. He's my teacher, and you might have accidentally trapped him here. Steve wasn't the type to resort to violence over a disagreement. If a conflict could be resolved peacefully, he wouldn't initiate it. Naturally, Wanda wouldn't agree. Anyone who disrupted her dreams was now her enemy. I don't have the person you're looking for here. With that, she raised her hands and swung them down at Steve, sending 2 crimson halos shooting towards him. Steve wielded a lightsaber in his right hand and a familiar vibranium shield in his left. With each strike, he deflected 2 halos of light. Wanda, currently untrained in the dark hold, cast her chaos magic instinctively, her methods crude and no match for the enhanced Steve. Steve casually dealt with Wanda's attacks, emphasizing his position, I have no intention of fighting you. I simply want to take my teacher away. As for the teacher taking Rama's body with him, that was beyond Steve's control. After all, you're a magician, and a woman at that. You certainly don't need such virility-boosting techniques. The 2 of them engaged in a battle outside Westview. Agatha, noticing the commotion, watched from a distance. Wanda's crude magic skills were unimpressive to the old witch, but Steve's mastery amazed her. Isn't this Captain America? How come he knows magic? As the saying goes, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Seeing Agatha leave, Lin Hao stood up and walked across the street with the 18-year-old Wanda. The arrangement left by Agatha was quite ingenious. If you push open the ordinary-looking door normally, you will see an ordinary house. If you use magic, you can be transported to her practice room. The Dark God book is floating in the room, surrounded by a defensive magic circle. Lin Hao approached as if no one was around, reached out and took down the black book. The violent magic power tried to invade, but was slapped away by him. After scanning it 10 lines at a glance, Lin Hao shook his head regretfully. "What's wrong?" Wanda came over and asked. "Is it useless?" "It's not very useful, it's completely useless." Lin Hao threw it to Wanda and added, "You can take a look and learn from it, but you don't need to go into it in depth." Chapter 424, Rama's body appears. Dongfang Bubei is kindly deceived. The source of the Darkhold is the god of the underworld, Sithorn. Though an ancient deity capable of projecting power across the multiverse, Lin Hao's perspective on him is relatively unremarkable. Having never fought him, it's hard to say, but there are ways to destroy him. The Marvel Universe's gods have inconsistent combat records, sometimes achieving varying results against the same enemy. Without a fight, one can't be certain. While this grimoire contains many powerful dark arts, it's only the creation magic that briefly appeared in the 4th season of Agents of SHIELD that holds some interest. Creating a body out of thin air for an AI, even granting it a soul, could offer some insight into the practice of mediating fate. While Lin Hao and 18-year-old Wanda were oblivious to the world around them, the battle outside Westview had already concluded. Seeing Wanda's relentless pursuit, Steve Rogers resorted to ruthless action. Chaos magic can alter reality, and Steve's current magical abilities couldn't contain Wanda, so he resorted to ruthless force, physically hypnotizing her. After breaking free from the entanglement, Steve quickly entered Westview, searching for Johnny Tyson. The town was small, and without anyone to hinder him, Steve quickly located Eunuch Tai using his magic. At the time, Eunuch Tai was working as a bodyguard at the town's elementary school, essentially the doorman responsible for opening and closing the gates. It was unknown if there was a teacher named Bai at the school, and even if there was, Eunuch Tai wouldn't be able to use her. In Wanda's illusion, everyone had a role to play. Regardless of one's outward identity, everything within the illusion was subject to the transformation of chaos magic. When he found Eunuch Tai, he was sleeping, dreaming about how he would open the door for the children tomorrow, his face brimming with warmth, a smile like the sun. Westview was Wanda's utopia, where everyone followed the script, free from violence and gore. Everyone played a kind role, even if they were conceited, showy, or jealous. This was perhaps the kind of life Wanda longed for. The turbulent Sokovia of her childhood became the image she most desired to escape. Seeing his teacher's expression, Steve immediately cast a spell, and after considerable effort, he finally expelled Wanda's power. Chaos magic isn't invincible. Besides Wanda's own efforts to reverse it, in the new series Agatha the Witch, Agatha, trapped by Wanda for 3 years, was freed by the protagonist's half-baked spell. "Teacher Tyson, do you still remember me?" Eunuch Tai opened his bewildered eyes, recognized the unchanged face, and immediately said angrily, "What are you doing here? Are you trying to steal Rama's body from me too?" Eunuch Tai had taught Steve the exorcist sword technique at the behest of Dongfang Bubei, never expecting him to remember his instruction, nor did he consider it a favor. Later, Captain Zhen appeared frequently in American media, even being labeled a most wanted criminal. Eunuch Tai didn't care whether Steve was wanted or not, he simply saw that the man who once needed his instruction had made tremendous progress, his combat power soaring. Although he never considered himself a master, seeing someone who was once inferior to him become stronger than him made Eunuch Tai feel uncomfortable. He felt like he was stuck in the same place, with no way forward. Rama's body might not be usable once. I can let Teacher Tyson use it first. If it's truly disposable, I'll give it to you, Steve said calmly. He still owed him the debt of gratitude for his teaching. HMPH, nice words, but don't forget them when the time comes. Eunuch Tai trusted Steve's character. Having once been poor and miserable, he could understand what Steve had done over the years. Seeing Eunuch Tai's tough words but soft-hearted, Steve also understood the importance of taking advantage of the situation. He quickly asked with a smile, "Teacher, have you found Rama's body in the past few days?" Steve had assumed he would have to search for it himself, but Eunuch Tai had valuable information. "The instructions that Master Dongfang gave me are right here in this school. He recalled how Eunuch Tai had arrived at the elementary school gate a few days earlier when a surge of magical energy swept over him, and he lost his sense of self, transforming into the doorman, Mr. Tai. The kids are out tonight, so let's go look for them. While things seemed somewhat smooth, Steve, as a leader, couldn't remain in this universe for long. He had to return to the Lone Star Republic to take charge. Eunuch Tai didn't want to waste any more time. Although the teachers at the school were all white, he had no use for them. Perhaps he could revisit them when he returned. The two of them headed straight from the staff quarters to the teaching building, searching the grounds before arriving at the warehouse behind the playground. Inside sat a figure in red, a mummified corpse before him. Lord Dongfang. Eunuch Tai rushed over and bowed respectfully. He had assumed Lord Dongfang had received a clue and sent him on a scouting expedition. He had never imagined Lord Dongfang had already found Rama's remains and had informed him to share in the opportunity. Such a favor could only be repaid with his own death. This was Steve's first close look at Dongfang Bubei. It was this delicate and beautiful woman before him who had given American men extraordinary hope, and even he had benefited from it. Eunuch Tai stood respectfully by his side, keeping a vigilant eye on his surroundings, protecting Lord Dongfang. Steve's character certainly wouldn't have rashly attempted to snatch the mummy before him. Fortunately, Zhen didn't keep them waiting for long. After pretending to sit cross-legged in meditation for a moment, she opened her eyes. Zhen glanced at Eunuch Tai and smiled faintly. It's rare you're awake. Her voice had restored to its magnetic masculine tone. Eunuch Tai didn't have time to notice this and quickly bowed, a look of guilt on his face. I'm incompetent. I've kept you waiting. No problem. The magic outside does have a negative effect on ordinary warriors. Zhen stood up, pointed at the mummy before her, and said, I've learned the skills contained in Rama's body. If you want to learn, you can study them on your own. Thank you, sir. Eunuch Tai was ecstatic. Damn Adam Smith, just wait. When I learn the magic, I'll kill you. Zhen glanced at the excited Eunuch Tai and the calm Steve. Was this a kind trick or a gentle reminder? This technique, however, is quite ambitious, emphasizing the integration of yin into yang, whereby yang arises when yin reaches its extreme. The moment you come into contact with Rama's remains, you will be corroded by the ultimate yin energy. You must continue to withstand the influence of this ultimate yin energy during your practice. You must accumulate sufficient internal strength to take the final step of integrating yin into yang. If you cannot withstand the erosion of this ultimate yin energy, you will lose your mind and become a monster driven by instinct. Whether you wish to comprehend this technique is up to you. With that, Zhen teleported away. Farewell, my lord. Eunuch Tai remained respectful. Chapter 425 Director Lin's carefully prepared magic. The so-called ultimate yin energy that Dongfang Bubei mentioned was actually a factor Lin Hao had extracted from the zombie virus, beneficial for strengthening the body. However, it was currently impossible to completely purify the toxins and eliminate the side effects of the zombie virus. While this extracted strength in the body, it also instilled a hunger in the infected, a zombie-like desire to devour the flesh and blood of the living. Director Lin naturally disapproved of such defective products, so he set his sights on these eunuchs. Although they were defective, they had at least undergone the purification by the three unreasonable minds of Lin Hao, Boma, and Vegapunk. Yang Jian also employed numerous celestial techniques to ensure that the infected retained their consciousness and would not become mindless zombies. Simply injecting the virus extract would not be considered a strengthening for the eunuchs, nor would it allow the extract to evolve. Therefore, Lin Hao had left a replicable consciousness on the body of Rama, containing a technique he had developed. Practicing this technique creates a zombie-like craving, but the craving isn't for human flesh or internal energy, but rather for ki, blood, and essence, the very essence of both human and animal life. Sounds a lot like a magic technique, doesn't it? It actually is. Lin Hao drew upon the magical techniques brought back by the little devil over the years, such as Silent Destruction, Blood Sea Demonic Sutra, and Nine Deaths Evil Technique, which specifically absorb essence, blood, and evil energy. He also incorporated the cultivation techniques of demons discovered during the Monkey King's journey to obtain the scriptures, creating this sinister technique that harms others for personal gain. This technique can be used to mask the hunger induced by the zombie virus extract and allows practitioners to grow noticeably stronger. It seemed like a dead end, but kind Director Lin offered the eunuch a glimmer of hope, embodying Zhen's saying, Yin gives birth to Yang. In theory, This magical skill can be cultivated to the point of entering the Dao through martial arts, transforming one's internal energy into Zenki, which can then be condensed into Zenitun, transforming one from a martial artist into a cultivator. However, this ray of hope is difficult to grasp, as the eunuchs harbor the zombie virus extract within their bodies, effectively doubly poisoned and needing to simultaneously resist the effects of both the magic and the virus. According to Lin Hao's simulations, if the eunuchs, after mastering his magical skill, want to take the final step, they must overcome the effects of the zombie virus extract and completely refine the virus, harnessing it for their own benefit. At this point, the evil nature of the magic skill will be eliminated, reaching the state of transformation from yin to yang, and their power will be transformed into majestic righteousness. At that point, a mere lump of flesh can grow however one wishes. At that point, Director Lin will also obtain a truly useful virus sample. Obviously, many people will die in this process. However, since they will all be Americans, this is a great merit for Lin Hao. If the entire American universe can cultivate even one virus sample, it's a pure profit. After Ajan left, Johnny Tyson and Steve Rogers looked at the mummy lying on the warehouse floor, bewildered. If Lord Dongfang hadn't just warned him, Eunuch Tai would have already touched the mummy and acquired the magical power. He wasn't sure what this so-called ultimate yin energy was, and whether it would affect his next move, so he hesitated. There were still a bunch of eunuchs waiting outside to take advantage of the situation. "Teacher, how about we take the things away first?" Steve suggested. Eunuch Tai thought about it and could only nod. His talent and ability were certainly not comparable to Lord Dongfang's. Who knew how long it would take him to stay here and comprehend the magical power? What if the magic barrier was broken by the eunuchs outside? Seeing his agreement, Steve found a large cardboard box from the warehouse and used magic to create a large hand to grab the mummy sitting cross-legged on the ground and place it inside the cardboard box. Looking around the unassuming warehouse, Steve couldn't hide his confusion. Why is Rama's remains, which Mr. Dongfang has been searching for centuries, in an ordinary elementary school warehouse? Steve might question this, but Eunuch Tai had unwavering trust in Master Dongfang. "Don't you see that pit in the ground?" Eunuch Tai pointed to a large, dug pit nearby. It was 5 or 6 meters deep. At its deepest point lay the remains of an underground chamber, clearly showing signs of human intervention. A rusty iron box rested atop the old masonry. Either a descendant of the Ming Dynasty prime minister lived here centuries ago, or Rama's remains passed through many owners before the last one buried them here. With so much change in the construction of buildings above ground, no one would have known such a miraculous mummy existed underground. But how did Dongfang Bubei know about this? Steve didn't dare ask. Even a blind man could see Eunuch Tai's deep respect for Dongfang Bubei. His emotional intelligence wasn't that low. The two of them left the school carrying the box containing Rama's remains. Steve had used magic to hide the box in a nearby dimension. In the movie, Loki used this magic to hide the space stone, but was ultimately forced out by Thanos at the cost of Thor's life. Outside the school gates, Agatha gazed at the two empty-handed men, uncertain. Are they looking for something? Lin Hao's cover kept Azhong hidden from Wanda and Agatha in the elementary school warehouse. It wasn't until Steve stormed in that Agatha finally followed him. The old witch, having witnessed Steve's combat prowess, wanted to capture him and interrogate him, but she worried she wouldn't be able to do it. Furthermore, he was accompanied by a swift and fierce companion who looked anything but ordinary. Should she take a gamble on an unknown opportunity? Before Agatha could make up her mind, a sudden change occurred. The magical barrier enveloping Westview melted away like snow under the scorching sun. At that moment, Wanda, who had been physically hypnotized by Steve, awoke. Seeing her dream vanish, Wanda let out a piercing wail. No, sensing a presence outside the school, Wanda slammed her hands to the ground, using the recoil to leap high into the air, hurtling towards the school. From the air, Wanda spotted 3 conscious individuals, 2 men and 1 woman. Aside from Steve, who had just knocked her unconscious, she didn't recognize the other 2. It seemed her magical barrier had become a sieve, allowing anyone outside to enter without warning. This frustrated Wanda deeply. "You've destroyed my home, Wanda." In the air, suddenly darkened, a surge of magical energy draping her with a cape and crown. At that moment, the Scarlet Witch was officially born. Die, 2 crimson halos of magic slammed into the 2 men and 1 woman on the ground, dispersing into 2 destructive spheres of light while still in the air. The 2 men's speed was far superior to that of ordinary humans, and their ghostly agility made them impervious to such crude attacks. However, Agatha, across the street, was forced to raise a magical shield. Put down Rama's body, the barrier melted away and the eunuchs outside rushed in. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.